Hello, everybody. Welcome. I am Aurora. Today is August 13th. It is 11 a.m. Pacific time. We're getting going on the galactic history, origins of technology, origins of AI, and self-protection from negative thought entities mini class. This is going to be about 5 hours long. Don't be intimidated. I'm joking. I have my electrolyte water ready. I have my coffee ready. I have everything ready. I have been fortified with a good breakfast. I hope you have as well. The way that I'm going to structure this is to begin with the level 1 material from galactic history, then some level 2 material for galactic history, which is supplemental because I'll tell you about the way that I recorded it. We will have body breaks throughout this so that you can take care of yourself, because I'm very big on respecting the physical container and also being able to take time to process things a little bit internally, because I'm going to be giving you tons and tons of information. So also, if I have your telepathic consent, I would love to connect with my mind to your mind. I only do this with consent if you are open to that. We are going to take breaks each hour, during which I will pause the recording. You can get food, drink, or whatever you need. And at some point, I might need to do a longer pause or break this video up into 2 segments so that I always have to spell it out, W-A-L-K, my D-O-G, who's sleeping in her little bed right underneath her because she might need something throughout this day also. So that's all of the major housekeeping to begin with for today. My next thing is profound thanks. Thank you to everybody who's tuned in for this class. Thank you to all of my long-term patrons, long-term students, beautiful flying rainbow lasagna dancers and friends. Thank you to new people who are tuning in, got new people coming in, that's good. Thank you to new people who have found my work possibly only through, social media and people sharing my links and other things like that. Welcome, and I'm so happy to connect with you. This stuff that I'm sharing with you today, these ideas, initially come from lesson 18 of Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans, which is a 20-part series. So I record the entire beginning, I share the entire beginning of the semester. So good to see you, Sharon. Thank you so much. Yeah, good to reconnect with you. I usually do the entire semester, because I've done this for 10 years, since like 2012 or 2013 or so, teaching everyone all about unconditional love and creating this firm foundation upon which the perceptions of higher faculties rest. Because it takes a lot of unconditional love here, which does not mean excuses or justification. It means acceptance. You accept the information that comes to you through this higher information portal up here. Because a lot of the things that we're going to know about today can be destabilizing, like, whoa, emotional destabilization, turbulence in my emotional field, that some of it can be challenging to hear about, because it can be about traumas on this planet, traumas in your own particular life, trigger alert, because we will be talking about rape and sexual assault, not only of the physical body, but of the planet, of consciousness, of the genetic code, of divine consciousness. So just be aware that those are some of the topics that we are talking about. It might not necessarily be for everyone of every age, or if you have sensitivities, just like to tell people that that's a little bit of what we'll be talking about. I don't always start this off with lesson 1, like, hello, welcome to my class. Let's talk about your deepest planetary and ancestral traumas. No, what I usually do is go through a lot of these foundation teachings of, like you can see in the background there, teaching about the chakras, teaching about the harmonic structure of the cosmos, teaching about a lot of these, what I exemplify in my artwork, concepts and ideas that are hugely positive, hugely powerful, and very uplifting. And I prepare everyone for lesson 18. So if you're finding my work for the first time, welcome, and I'm happy that you're here. And you're starting at like the greatest intensity level, like you're lifting the 50-pound weight today. But usually I kind of ramp up to that. So also gonna start a new semester in September, and anyone that is joined on and enrolled in this class, you are absolutely encouraged, invited, and welcome. And I cheer for you to simply keep going with that, roll with that momentum, and keep going into September with us, because then we'll begin with the 10-pound weight again, and you can work your way up to this. So initially I recorded those first 20 lessons, 2012, 2013 or so. And then I had my own vision of what galactic history was. Then a year or so later, I got more information, because this is what happens. My insight is always growing. I'm always learning new things, and that's when I recorded the level 2 supplementary stuff. So lesson 1, the level 1 stuff, level 1 is hugely worth it. And the people that are formally enrolled here taking this right now, that's the first segment in the mini class. So there's like the first segment that's like whatever, 132 minutes or something like that. And that contains a lot of relevant information. Then it contains stuff about the economy of hell. I think that lesson is maybe one of the best lessons that I've ever recorded. It is very succinct and articulate, speaks very effectively about, in truthfulness, like not in judgment or hyperbole, about what this world is. That's why I say, like, I'm not sure if this is a class right now for everybody of every age, because we explore some very, very profound, but possibly dark and disturbing truths about what is the real economy here in this earth. It is not based on gold or petrodollars, I will tell you that. It is based on human misery, specifically sexual slavery. So difficult topics to accept. And also I offer huge empowerment in the level 1 stuff. Part 4 is self-protection from negative thought entities. So the way I'm going to structure today's presentation is, and when I speak to this is part of what you do in response to this planetary trauma, planetary invasion, rape of the genetic code, sexual slavery. A big part of this is flying rainbow lasagna and the concept of entropy. The teaching of self-protection from negative thought entities is going to be towards the end of today. So as I was just saying, we're going to take 1 hour bio-body breaks. And also I'll do little pauses in the recording. I'm going to start off with galactic history level 1 and level 2. Then we're going to get into the economy of hell. Then we're going to get into self-protection from negative thought entities. So also, yeah, I'll have plenty of energy. I'll have plenty of caloric energy to be able to do a really good closing with the self-protection teaching. It's very, very powerful on what it is. And I'm going to start off, and if you see me looking off over here, it's because I have extensive notes. Please don't be distracted. This is definitely way more than I can memorize, and I'll try to kind of turn myself so that I'm not looking off so much. It's such a weird angle. Wrote almost for the whole week. I went deeply back into all of the things that I've written about for the past 10 years. Wrote notes on them, and then also I will do interjections. So the stuff that I recorded 2012 or 2014 was relevant to them, to that time. Now we are in a different vista or a different landscape of both the challenges that we face with technology. The planetary invasion has leveled up, and guess what? We also have to level up. And I know that I've leveled up in both my spiritual practice and my spiritual warriorhood, and in the responses that I make to this, and in the ways that I use flying rainbow lasagna. So I'll be teaching all about things that were not in the original recording. So anybody who did their homework, thank you. My hat is off to you. You are prepared for class. If you didn't do your homework, don't worry. There's no chastisements in my class. You'll have an opportunity to go back and access those recordings, and it's worth it to delve, because I do a lot with drawings and pictures that I might not necessarily do that much of today, just because it takes a lot of extra time. But I will paint a picture with my mind, so I will telepathically beam it in, worth delving into the lessons. There are a few things that I now have, let's say, a new, greater understanding of, augmented understanding beyond what those original lessons were, where I'm like, as I listen to that, that doesn't resonate as purely truthful anymore. It was my best seeing at the time. So I'll be able to make a distinction here today of those things that I did not consider to be absolutely accurate, or a reframing of the things that I think are really important. I'm about to get going on all of this. So starting with level 1, lesson 18, this is part 1, galactic history, why humanity is in the position that we are in of having to reascend the genetic ladder. So brief aside, what we're doing right now on this planet and what we were doing in 2012, that I felt like that was the moment. It wasn't short-circuited. It was not badly delayed, like, oh no, we missed our flight and now we have to wait 10 years. No, not at all. It was more of a reprieve, and in music, a coda, where like you play, then there's new stuff, then you kind of loop back to the original themes that you were working on. All the things that we've been working on over the past 10 years have been a wonderful opportunity for growth, even though you might not, I can feel you guys going like this, like wonderful opportunity for growth. Like I have been through some SHIT and I do not appreciate it. I know, because of course we all want to be in bliss and in a paradise state, and having achieved the attainment of ascending. It's been an opportunity over the past 10 years to learn and grow, further refine your soul, further refine your trajectory and sense of self and who you are. And then we revisit this ascension, which is truly the portal that we are going through now. So in 2012, we went through kind of like halfway. It's been a lot of work, definitely a lot of mountain climbing up there. This class is all about, why do we have to climb this mountain? Why? And I'll tell you in galactic history terms, we went from a high level of consciousness into a very descended or diminished level of consciousness, where this is where we are now. No offense to anyone. You're beautiful people, and I love you very much. However, having to eat physical food, having to eat another organism that once was alive, not being purely telepathic, being cut off or severely diminished in the divine connection. These are all the states of the diminishment down here. And the reason why I've saved galactic history towards the end of the semester is because people often are like, wait a minute, I start learning about all this stuff. Wait a minute, I don't like this at all. Like, I don't like learning that I'm supposed to have all these higher faculties, and I'm supposed to be able to see and touch time directly, and I'm supposed to be able to eat sunlight directly, and we're not supposed to have to live in houses, and we're definitely not supposed to have to use money or any of these things. I get mad. My hands go like this because I get mad. What's going on? So, the bitterness or disappointment or even rage, these are appreciated. These are valid. Validate your response to that, because otherwise you would be a lobotomized idiot that if you didn't feel that way about it. And when I laugh, I'm not laughing because anything is funny. I'm laughing because we need to use lightheartedness and humor as warriors in terms of going through this. So what happened to cause the degradation of human faculties? How did this event affect human culture? How does that affect what we are experiencing right now in human culture in terms of ascension and the planetary and cultural awakening? So big positive, ascension ongoing, planetary and cultural awakening. Negative or thing that might be perturbing to you is the sense of having to acknowledge buried planetary trauma. Today, we are going to talk about the primary trauma that every single one of us has experienced. When I say us, I have to loosely put myself in that category because I'm going to tell you my trajectory. I'm Aurora, a galactic walk-in. So Aurora is a collective that is actually a group of coherent light being consciousnesses that travels from star to star on a giant network of light that is like the neurology of a great brain. I was here in Atlantis. I actually remember Lemuria also. Brief aside, what's the difference between Lemuria and Atlantis? Lemuria would be considered an ancient time, when there was the initial sprinkling of life here on Earth, biological life that could contain consciousness, and it was more like being a mushroom person. I don't think in silly terms. The sense of being like completely connected to the planet, receiving everything that you need just by sitting in one place, not having to get up and walk around and do a lot of stuff and like get stuff, go places, do stuff, really just having a body that was an anchor for consciousness and being largely in the world of cognition, imagination, ephemera, the non-physical world, but having a physical body anchor. And a lot of people who remember that time, it was a very peaceful, gentle time. Those were amazing experiences to be a part of. And it was not an easy life, but it was a 1 pound weight. It was at the level of like, yeah, like we can do this at this level, because before that, everything was pure thought and non-embodiment. So even just getting embodiment was a huge accomplishment and a huge leveling up. And people remember the destruction of Lemuria as another primary trauma reverberation, and they think their shoulders go down. What did I do wrong to deserve that? Why was our culture destroyed? Why did that happen? Please do not internalize a sense of blamefulness, not from you, not from your higher self, not from God, not from the cosmos, not a sense of like, we did something bad and wrong, and then all the chess pieces got smashed off the board, and then, God set everything up in a new civilization called Atlantis. Please don't think of it in that way. You did not deserve trauma and suffering, and you did not deserve trauma and suffering with the invasion of Atlantis. So many things like this are about like, what is our response as responsible galactic citizens to trauma? I always tell you guys, this is not wine, this is electrolyte water. I drink my blessed water out of a chalice, thank you. Response, being a responsible galactic citizen means what is your response to trauma? And so that is first the recognition of there's not blame or guilt or a sense of deservedness or anything like that. Truly believe in the goodness of God, and that God has wanted to, and you as God's self have wanted to create amazing experiences for yourself. And then also you've experienced some destruction and some suffering. So Lemuria came first, Atlantis came out of Lemuria. What was Atlantis like? It was a place where we had body forms that look a lot like what this body form is like in terms of being the humanoid shape, and also was on a different scale, a lot bigger, and also acted differently in terms of behavior and metabolism because it was an immortal body. And also, throughout this presentation today, I'm going to speak about, sometimes I talk about ancient Atlantis, but in more correct time language, it is ongoing Atlantis. Here is the world of Atlantis, and here is the world that we are in right now. And these are two concurrent realities that are having similar time reverberations at the same time. So time language here now is inadequate. It is linear. It is not adequate to really accurately portray the subtleties and complexities of multidimensional existence. Please know that every single one of you and most of the people that we see here in this world also lives or lived in the concurrent time known as Atlantis. So Lemuria was like a dream world, and then they fell and then went into another layer of the dream, that is Atlantis. Then Atlantis fell or is falling. And that is concurrent to our present level of experience as embodied, smaller, more vulnerable, fragile mortals. But I want you to know that the healing that happens in this kernel of time, like we're in like the center of the Tootsie Roll lollipop, you know, like the gumball center with all these different layers all around it, the healing that you do in your life here in this now place radiates outward through all the other layers of time, where you are an immortal, exalted being, an amazing God being, a pure light body waveform. So it's very, very valuable for you to be here, for you to be present, for you to be conscious in your life, and for you to be doing all of the healing work that you've been doing. Also, my hat is off to you, because we avoided catastrophe many times, and I'll talk about this throughout the lesson today. You have survived many, many possible cataclysms that are reverberations of the fears of the past. Oh no, this happened back then. Oh no, it's going to happen again. You surfed the waves and you did an awesome job. So please pat yourself on the back, or congratulations to all of us at having healed that much. This is exactly like if you had an attack, an assault, a rape, something that happened to you that was violent, and then you go in that same area of town, or you're driving on that same highway, and you're kind of like, oh no, is this going to happen again? Guess what? It doesn't happen again, because we are able to use our consciousness, our willpower, corrective experiences, divine connection, Christ, which is, again, non-denominational. Although I wear this cross, I'm not a member of a Christian church. I'm talking about a cosmic Christ that is here, that is an eye of time, that helps to guide you on the path. And that you can say, I'm able now, using my eye of time, to avoid those negative timelines. And the rational mind, which is yellow, which is here in the chakra system, might hop up and say, hey, I'm the rational mind, I'm a troublemaker. And I'm going to say, well, how come my eye of mind didn't work before? And how come my Merkaba didn't work before? Every time that happens, please understand, and I'll explain more fully, when your mind of intellect and ego pops up, that is the implanted mind. That is not your true mind. That is the mind of the invader that came to our planet at the end of Atlantis, as Atlantis was falling or is falling. And that is the mind that we receive, or that one receives in coming here in being a baby. So your guys' journey is like this. Came from Atlantis, came through a portal of your mother's womb, had a beautiful open chakra crown connection to the divine, and along about like the first year of your life, this part kind of closes up. You become more fully individuated in your body, you develop a mind, an individuated ego, and a sense of self. And then you learn how to speak, and you become what is called like a human member of society, an immortal in this mortal in this place here now. My journey was different. I lived in Atlantis. I did the process of walking on the actual planet, eating nothing but pure sunlight and vibration and frequency from the world around me. Then I was able to do the ascension process back then, when everybody ascended, nobody died, and get to be a part of the floating light collective that circulated around the planet. Then I graduated with all of those consciousnesses, like a thought seed or a spore, but a positive spore, not like an evil bold spore, like a good spore, something that you want. Coming untethered from this planet and being able to then travel all the way around the star systems. That's Aurora Collective. That's my band. That's why I'm named Aurora. I'm a walk-in that I came through the Flying Rainbow Lasagna genetic portal in 2001, kind of like a backbend time loop into this time place now, because of something very unfair that was happening to a mortal woman's body that was so unfair and so against cosmic law that I chose, as a person who had already been through the ascension process, to come into this body and help the matcher of this body to ascend, to share this concept that is a rectification concept with everyone who is here, and to be what I would define as a planetary protector. A guardian is a good way of saying it, an inspirer and encourager, a nourisher. I don't know if I'll use the word planetary midwife, but like helping the world to give birth to a new dimension, helping this planet to ascend. That is the purpose for who and what I am here, and I am a distillation or representation of something larger. So if I say something like, so my journey of having a mind is a little bit different. I'm not here from infancy. I'm here in adulthood. I learned many parallel life journeys and levels of development in chronological adulthood, which for me was the early stages of human development as Aurora. So that my life is a little bit different, but our paths are parallel, and I fight alongside you in solidarity. And I'm here experiencing the same social challenges and technological challenges that all of you do, as a way of really exemplifying, like, this is how you do it. This is how you run the marathon. And it wouldn't be fair if I was like up on a cloud. I joke about this, on a cloud, doing the backstroke, like eating a strawberry, and be like, oh guys, like you just ascend like this. You'd all be like, Aurora, like that's not fair. Like you're up there where it's all easy. So I'm like, I am here. And I know that you have to do hard things, like pay the Geico bill and, whatever, buy food and have sneakers to be able to run around and do exercises. Like you need stuff. Here, I'm here experiencing the same things, including electric bills. I joke that electrons flowing in a wire. So yes, here to offer solidarity and very real solutions. And the very real solutions also speak to what I'll talk about at the end, self-protection from negative thought entities. So if I talk about who we were in Atlantis, I was in Atlantis with all of you, have had a different journey and a different trajectory. I'm here on this planet with all of you now, but I didn't come in through the same portal of experience. So just making my language really perfect. Back to my notes. I'll tell you that all of the information that I'm sharing today comes to me through my direct vision, through my insight, my inner eye, and my seeing. Because sometimes people kind of get a little attitude and go like, who are you? Side eye. Who are you? And how do you know this stuff? And I'm skeptical. I understand that I'm on a traumatized planet. Your skepticism is warranted. You have been lied to a lot. And then there have been well-meaning but severely distorted people that often say, I know everything, and let me tell you what things that are distorted. I will tell you that I have huge integrity, been here for 20 years, have a great track record of that, and stand in great security at being able to share this with you in truthfulness and knowing that I'm sharing things that are accurate and empowering and that are worthy of your trust. So if you're new to me, know that I'm worthy of your trust, and you'll sense that going through time. Alan says, oh, Cassandra's very excited. Thank you. I'm happy that you're here. And Alan says, Aurora, your hair is lovely too. Oh, beautiful. Thank you. She says, it's like, he says, flying golden lasagna. Thank you very much for the acknowledgement. I certainly prepared today with all of my intellectual teachings and then with everything else that's important for today. So really appreciate that. Okay, on to the important information. Let's talk about the negative thought entities. What is this? Also, like in my class, I tend to focus so much verbal and emotional and attention energy on things that are anything but the negative thought entities, because I very much believe what you focus on increases, what you look at with your mind, with your attention, you are literally eating it and also feeding it. You're creating a bridge of sustenance between yourself and that thought form. So of course, I have always recommended and encouraged for us to focus on thoughts of God, thoughts of divinity, thoughts of personal empowerment. I pulled up Flying Rainbow Lasagna, but that also includes all of the teaching about quantum reality, multiple dimensions. What is time shaped like? What are your chakras? The harmonic language, which is the mind of God. All of that stuff is really, really worthy. Let's focus 99% of our attention on that stuff. But for today, this afternoon, what we're going to be talking about mostly are negative thought entities, which a lovely student of this class, whose name is Pedro, I don't know if he'll tune in today, but he's been in my class for like over 5 or 6 or 7 years, a long time. He came up with this acronym, POOTIS, P-O-O-T-I-S, those pesky occupiers of the interstices. And that name has really stuck because you know why? It's not an emotionally charged term. These consciousnesses can also be accurately termed demons. And we'll get into religious mythology and traditional Christian theology later in the teaching today. But please know that the word demon is like hugely emotionally charged and extremely judgmental, even though possibly they're worthy of the critique. But I'm going to be very balanced in the way that I present all of this and give you all the backstory and all the motivational accuracy for who they are, where they ended up, and then what is your appropriate response. Because this is just like, whatever, if you met somebody who was, a shambling homeless person, and you might be like, oh, like, I feel so bad, and all these different things, and what has happened to you in your life. Then when you find out more about what has happened to them in their life, like, you have really made life choices that brought you to this moment, which is, where I'm coming from on all of this. So, and when I talk about offering love, compassion to the occupiers of the interstices, these putis, I always say this in every semester. That does not mean hug and kiss a demon. That does not mean any amount of softening your boundaries. I want you all to have very, very strong energetic boundaries, because in this sense, real love and real compassion is taking energy away from the consciousnesses that are not supposed to have consciousness, and they're not supposed to be sustained. I will get into that, but very, very clear on my boundaries here. Not a judgment of these putis, but a recognition of who they are, how they got there, how they are negatively affecting and afflicting you. The justification, I'll teach you all about cosmic law, the justification for your own boundaries and your own guarding of your energy field, and what it is appropriate to do if someone tries to steal from you. If someone tries to either go against your boundaries, invade you in some way, assault you in some way, take your sexual energy, because a lot of this has to do with sexual creative energy, insert themselves into your mind, which is also like that is a violation, is a type of mind rape or non-consensual connection. What are you supposed to do? You are supposed to uphold your boundaries. And I love and respect Christians. I am highly critical of the doctrine of the Christian church and anything that encourages what would be considered, in quotes, Christian martyrdom, or the sense that if you're a true Christ or a true Christian person, that you don't fight back. All of that is an inversion and a weaponization of a teaching that is from a teacher who's a great person, great, amazing, loving, beloved person that has an actual existence in the world and is totally loving towards you, and has been in many ways taken, twisted, distorted, cherry-picked so that certain things are taught to you. You are not, as Christs, you are not supposed to be victims. You're not supposed to be martyrs. And Christ is this presence that is here as an aperture on your body that you are able to use with enormous power, with laser-like efficiency, to clear out your own hijackers from your body. And that's another part of the self-protection and response as a galactic citizen who is responsive and responsible to the present situation, that you will be able to use your higher faculties effectively in response to these putis who are the antithesis. They do not take responsibility for what they have done. And that's what I'm trying to say. In like a person in a terrible life situation who might present themselves as, oh, poor me, it's so undeserved. They do not take personal responsibility for what they've done, not only here in this planet, but on Mars, on a planet named Tiamat or Malduk, in other dimensions, across time. Like, they have a long personal history of not taking responsibility, and that it is totally appropriate in your life response to recognize that and to exert your boundaries and be like, no, I'm not going to give you $5 so you can go buy crack. Like, you need to take responsibility for your life. And of course, I'm being lighthearted there, but just to break the emotional tension. And hello, Rainbow Body. I see that you've joined in. Thank you for being here. Okay, the demons, occupiers of the interstices, putis, and these can also be considered the unrestful dead. Let me make a distinction here. Oh, grab my little sculpture. I use this sculpture all the time. Membrane of death, that would be this curvy line that's along here, this curvy line that's along here. So the membrane of death is a place where you go when you get a gutter ball, and I'll talk all about this, but basically, who is on the membrane of death? There are versions of you that are on the membrane of death. You are not a puti. You are not part of a flawed time experiment across multiple planets and multiple dimensions. You are not stuck. If you die, it is not your fate to be like stuck on the membrane of death, or like I call it like turds that keep on circling the bowl. Like they're smeared on the edge of the singularity of a black hole, circling around, never really quite going down into entropy. You are not that. You are very, very different. So big, huge distinction between any living, alive, biological creature, organism, person that had a divine connection and now is dead through misadventure and ends up on the membrane of death. What happens to that level of consciousness is you have life review, like a sweater that's been all knitted together. Your sweater gets unknitted, turns into a ball of yarn again. You essentially go back to the beginning of the time vortex and you try it again from a slightly different trajectory. So you're not meant to be punished at all. This is big. This goes back to the trauma of Lemuria, ongoing trauma of Atlantis. Bad things happen to you. You resonate, one resonates. I don't want you to do it anymore, but it has been the habit of resonating back to that trauma and saying, this bad thing keeps happening to me, I must deserve it. No, cancel and clear and short circuit that thought. That is an erroneous presumption that these are negative time reverberations, but in every moment, it is the moment to have the corrective experience. So you do not deserve to be dead on the membrane of death and suffering or being tortured in hell by the demons, the ones who run hell, the ones who have co-opted and claimed the membrane of death, the membrane between worlds, and that they have set up a huge, I wouldn't call it a civilization there, because it is not very civilized, like not very pinkies up over there, but let's say a culture, in the same way that you can culture bacteria on a petri dish or something like that. The culture of what is there takes prisoners and captives, and it's like, oh, I see an innocent soul has died through misadventure and you're stuck on the membrane of death, and now I'm going to make your dissolution process long, slow, and painful, and get as much energy out as I can, like wringing out as much possible energy as I can while you're in the unknitting process. So there are two very divergent levels of consciousness going on here. And also in your own being here, you're in a body that is an amalgamation or a genetic hybrid. I'll get into this in detail. Please comprehend that you have a true nature, the true nature of who you are and the way that God created you in your pristine genetic code. I will jokingly call this your factory settings. Like on your phone, when you get a problem with your phone, I don't know what to do, return to factory settings. That is your true genetic nature, connected to God, divinely connected through your crown chakra here, and through every layer of your being, that it's who you truly are. Then there's the invaders that came inside of the human genetic code. And this is an ancient trauma, which again, you did not deserve. And that the whole journey of what it is to be alive right now in this refinery of soul and refinery of consciousness, figuring out who you are and who you are not, making lifetime choices in behavioral choices. I am this, I am not this. Like I would do this, but I would not do this. Like life will offer you choices. Like you're hungry, will you steal? You know, you're doing this, will you harm someone else? Will you stab someone else in the face? And you make choices that are boundaries, that are energetic boundaries where you're like, no, I won't do that. That's not who and what I am. And I'll get into this in the economy of hell also, even what are considered normalized mundane choices, like whom you work for. Like, will I work for a large corporation? I quote unquote, I know they're an evil corporation, but will I work for them? I don't know. Like they give me a steady paycheck or like whatever, working for some government agency. As you will see, governments are outgrowth of these negative thought aliens too, or negative thought entities, or even the military. Is it acceptable to do any of these things? You draw boundaries. And again, I'm not here judging people that either work for a large corporation or for the military or any of that, but I'm going to tell you the totally non-sugar-coated truth about exactly with whom those people are in alignment. Like, who are you working for? That's who you're working for. You got to know it. Don't sugarcoat it. And then live with your choices or your life, what you exemplify in your life. So that little story about like, you know, it's like kind of a earth myth. I've got an angel on one shoulder and a devil on the other shoulder, and they're both trying to talk to the person and be like, you know, eat broccoli. It's from a commercial where one's like, eat broccoli, like eat something healthy, and the other was like, no, eat ice cream. You know, like they're both fighting with you. That's the inner struggle of what it is to be an embodied human right now, because you've got a genetic hybridization inside of you with two different tendencies, and this is a rough separation too. There's actually many, many, many genetic tendencies inside of you that are constantly vying for attention, including family ancestors that might be traveling down the timeline, not all of whom are your friends. Big understanding or insight there. You know, there are many indigenous traditions that are about the venerable ancestors. I'm not here even criticizing indigenous traditions, but I want to make a huge distinction. Some ancestors are venerable ancestors that you would wish to be aligned with. Their values and their love for you is palpable. Like, they're wonderful to connect with. And then there are some things that in this culture are called family demons. Like alcoholism is sometimes euphemized as a family demon, a curse, family curse that gets passed from one generation to the next generation. And these are not just euphemisms. These are literalisms, literal entities that get passed down the timelines in certain families' genetic codes that constantly want to be fed and expressed and be not alive, but semi-alive, be alive through the actions of bodies that they take over. You get hitchhikers and hijackers, and those are not venerable ancestors that you wish to be a part of. So again, huge boundaries in choices that you are making, that one is making between who you are and who you're not. And just because something comes from part of your family history, your family lineage, or your cultural lineage, or your planetary lineage, does not mean that it's something that you have to embody in this life. We really, I want to say you really, but I'll include myself, we really get a chance in this moment to make very clear choices about who and what you want to be living through you. I want God to be living through me. I want the angelic, superhuman, light body, coherent light being to be living through me. And I do not want these consciousness residues that are literally aligned with death to be trying to live through me, which is basically means they drive your car into a ditch on the side of the road. Whose hands are on the steering wheel of your car? God. God wants you to be alive. God wants you to not only be alive, but be super thriving and, huge longevity and live like an angelic superhuman. And it is these other lower thought forms. We can call them negative thought entities. They are thought entities. They are fragments of consciousness. They are unresolved traumas. They also include negative emotional energies. And negative emotions are things like anger, sadness, grief, fear, anxiety. They are perturbations of the field. Their field is the time field and consciousness field. So if you ever have seen like a barbecue and it's very hot, but then up above the hot surface of the barbecue, the air looks wavery. It looks wavery. It looks like water. Those are perturbations. And that is what we're seeing in time. Disturbances in time that are literally waves that are going like crazy all over the place, not the way they're supposed to go. So time waves are supposed to be like beautiful, like the way that dolphins swim. Beautiful time waves, not all these like crazy things going on. It's because of crap time machine. It's because of crap experiments with time that have been hugely irresponsible, caused a huge amount of suffering, and that I am here as a responsible galactic citizen and adult to help rectify this. And that I invite you also to claim that as your place in the world, responsible galactic adult, or in the becoming of that is your goal of what you are aligning with to respond to these things. Okay, let me drink a little bit and then go on with my notes. I should also read before I tend to roll on. Let me also read what's happening. Oh, this is interesting. Sharon says, yes, Aurora tells us the truth first, and then the information comes out in other ways through other people. I am like a positive cell phone broadcasting tower. I get the information from the divine mind and then try to send it out as accurately as I possibly can through the art, through the music, and through these teachings for planetary uplift. And I'm very, very happy when other people also pick up on that divine signal, and when they also are amplifying, sending out, using their own voice, using their own interpretive system to express the same truth. We need that. We need I call it beep, 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 beep. We need a lot of beep, 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 beep. So I appreciate that. And then also it is good to have confirmation from multiple sources. And I appreciate also the recognition. Melissa says, very common for average way to look at things is that there's only the physical and anything you cannot see is not real. Melissa, thank you. Thank you for your long-term presence as an FRL dancer, band member, flying lasagna person all around, and with great insights. Thank you for being here today. And you spoke extremely well, because that's going to come up in the notes. The sense of the mind that is not your mind, yellow solar plexus level, that's been implanted. And part of what it has implanted is this sense of anything that you can't see with your physical eyes isn't real. And what I'm making right now is my SpongeBob SquarePants face, a stupid face of a lobotomized idiot. No, there are many, many things that are beyond what you can perceive with your 5 physical senses or the basic viewpoint of objective materialism. It is hugely hubristic for science or an objective materialist to be like, la, 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 if I can't see it, it doesn't exist. Like there's huge levels. Like you can't see x-rays, you can't see, there are many things that humans cannot perceive. And yes, until an apparatus was invented, humans did not know or perceive or believe in x-rays. Now we believe in them and use them all the time. And also, like, whatever, when they first discovered radiation, Marie Curie was walking around with, like, a hunk of uranium in her pocket. Like, she didn't know that that was emitting radiation that makes you die. I'm laughing horribly here. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it does not affect you. The truthful converse is that just because you cannot see it, it can absolutely be affecting you, even to the point of disease and death. Hello, welcome to our world. You're all supposed to be immortals who eat nothing but pure light and who live in a state of no disease, total comfort and peace until you ascend and no one ever dies. So the fact that you look at a world where people eat other organisms, no judgment here, and we'll get into dietary issues too, eat other organisms to stay alive, can't sustain yourself purely on pure sunlight, and there's evidence of disease and then there's evidence of death. Something is going on here, something beyond what can be sensed with the mere 5 physical senses. So there's definite evidence, if you have a real exploratory, real type of questing mind, that you'd be like, why does this stuff all exist? And most of the people ask these questions or are questing when they're in childhood, when they're not fully implanted with the mind. But then usually when people get a little bit older, they're fully implanted and you stop asking those questions. So let's all return to the childlike mind of not being fully implanted with the invader's mind, so you can even see the invaders. Cassandra, thank you for being here, says, can we evolve and change these boundaries as we go? What we might have done earlier in life, we never would again. Absolutely. And that is part of your soul, refinement of your soul and of your journey. So I want you to know, and I don't speak in judgment about anybody that has substance abuse or addiction tendencies. When I talk about that, those are demons or putis or these negative thought entities that are attempting to act through you. Yes, there's hope. Absolutely. You clear your energy field. You clear out your genetic code. You literally can restructure your genetic code, reweave the sweater of who you are with flying rainbow lasagna and various other techniques. And that is turning into this responsible galactic citizen. So whatever you've been through, it is possible to heal from it, to rectify it, to learn from it and grow beyond it. And the true higher dimensional perspective is always to see a person as the totality of their context. When I as Aurora Collective, when we look at each other and at the world, we see a whole person like an open book, everything from birth to death and everything on every timeline and concurrent dimension. So it's not, again, selective to be like, that's that thing that you're embarrassed about. That's your worst day ever. That's the thing that you never should have done. And that's all that you see. That would be a terrible clips reel or terrible editing of all the things that you shouldn't have done in your life. Whenever there's something that you're feeling like, oh, I want to hide that, or I'm ashamed of that, or whatever it is, we see it in the true context of your life. Like if you stole something, why did you steal? If you were on drugs, why were you on drugs? Why did that happen? If something bad happened to you, if you did something bad, well, in any of these circumstances, why did that happen? And then also, so why did it happen? Then what was your response to it? Let's say you effed up, big mistake. That's that big mistake I want to hide, I'm afraid of. What if you say, okay, I made that big mistake, and then look at what I did over here instead, fixed it up and became a better person. That's the story of you. That is how a true, loving, higher dimensional, compassionate master views you, including all of the ascended masters. And that is the radical self-compassion, radical love that I want you all to focus on yourselves with your blazing heart of compassion in your life. And if you haven't rectified, if there's something that you feel bad, wrong, ashamed, guilt, I don't really like to go into those are implanted feelings. But if you have those feelings about something, time to rectify. You are alive. Where there's life, there's hope. And it is your response as a responsible individual to say, I did that thing. How do I fix it? How do I fix that relationship? How do I acknowledge the harm that I've caused? How do I change my trajectory? How do I grow from the experience? And that is totally up to you and the masterpiece of who you are in your life. Just going to read this as a direct message to me. Oh, I'll have to talk with you later about that, okay? But let's talk when I have focus and privacy to be able to talk with you about that, okay? But I definitely will. Okay, so back to my notes. My teachings intend always to focus on the things that we wish to increase, attenuate to, like the basic structure of the cosmos. And so that's why I don't start with this information. But our journey up to this point has been about cultivating the foundation of unconditional love and the comprehension of the reality viewpoint through activated inner vision and higher faculties. So as you get the foundation of love, all of this stuff and this stuff comes online, and you start to just see and know stuff beyond this level here. That is the implanted mind. You supersede that, and you're like, my heart, my true insight of Christ, my true connection to God simply tells me so, and that's it. And there's just simply no argumentation with there. It takes a lot of strength, though, a lot of physical, spiritual strength to be in acceptance about some of these things that you see. Some of it might not be pretty that you start to see, but there has to be acceptance of it, and that's part of being responsive and responsible. So I don't want to put too much focus on the negative thought entities. There's so much more to my teachings, but also this is when we have to talk about humanity's origins, why these negative thought entities exist, and what is really going on in human culture. So beginning with beautiful, like right now, we're going to do is scale back. Imagine the camera of everything that we're imagining it in your mind's eye. It scales all the way back, and you're looking at like the galactic perspective. You're looking at the sun, all of the stars, the potential for life on all of the planets, beginning with the sun and the solar system and the origin of the third dimension. I would draw like a picture of the sun and Mercury, Mars, and Venus, like our solar system that we're familiar with here, and talk about the sun. The sun is solar consciousness. It is an emanator of reality. So this is big in all of my teachings and sharings. The sun is not just a nuclear furnace. It's not just a place where there's lots of hot stuff. It's very radioactive. You know, you burn up if you go there. It is a neuron on a great network. It is hugely loving, intelligent, and compassionate, and definitely a responsible galactic citizen. Because you don't get to be at that point in the galactic symphony without taking a huge level of radical self-responsibility. The sun is responsible for its creation. The sun is like a great artist in the sky. The sun emanated, created, or I don't even know what is the phrase I would like to say, kind of like conglomerated, squished together like clay, out of these waveforms of potentiality, the sun squished together like clay, our entire solar system. And our entire solar system has a chakra shape to it. It is a macrocosm of the microcosm. That is what we are. And we are absolutely its children. We are its children of light. The photons that the sun sends off are like feelers, and we are, of course, made of light. We're made of photons, and everything that we're experiencing here is meant to reflect back to the sun and be like, thank you for making me. I'm a piece of you, and I'm going to send you back real-time, quote unquote, live stream broadcasts of exactly what I'm experiencing, so that the sun can then fine tune. Be like, oh, that's what's going on down there. Oh, that's effed up. That's a problem. That's a problem. Let me retune reality. Or also the sun might want to know, that part sounds great. That part looks great. It's an artist positively taking care of its own creations, which are life. And this is also done, of course, in conjunction with God, the divine presence. And I unabashedly speak about God and the divine presence a lot in this class. And it's a major part of all of these time drawings in the zeroth dimension. God is really at the center of all of this. We focus a lot of attenuate to God, speak God into truthfulness. This is what we want to be really focusing on and talking about. So in my notes, I describe it as the individual planets. Hold on a second. The sun is our parent in the sky. It is our parent of consciousness, totally loving parent, perfect parent. All of the rest of the individual planets, both rocky and gaseous, are emanations of the sun. So emanations is a good way of saying it. And all of the planets were created as exudations of the sun during the formation of this solar system. They are sustained and upheld by the sun due to the solar wind. So the solar wind is a force and a force field of highly charged particles and energy that's constantly blowing away from the sun. Like if I'm standing in front of a fan and the fan is like blowing against me, that's the sun. And it's a force field of consciousness. And that consciousness creates the sun's heliosphere around itself, and it prevents incoming space debris and other things that would destabilize our planets, destabilize their orbits, destabilize the life that is growing on them. It creates a protective force field. This wind of thoughts and ideas and timelines that is blowing away from the sun keeps out debris, so that each one of these little experiments, but it's not an experiment, but little art projects is a better word. Each planet being an art project and each one has its own fragility, and you don't want a bunch of stuff to mess up your painting and walk across your painting when it's wet paint, keeping out the cosmic debris from disrupting either the orbits of the planets or the development of the orderly life upon them. So the solar system is also analogous to the chakras or energy centers of our body, and the sun's heliosphere is a giant toroidal. This is a toroid. It's actually two of them, one going like this and one going like this. So the sun's heliosphere is a toroidal energy field, and it is the same shape as our individual energy field. Due to the fractal, self-similar, microcosmic, macrocosmic nature of reality, we can apply the template of the chakras from our individual energy field to that of the entire solar system. So what you know about your own body from being in your body and the chakras on your body, you can apply to our entire solar system. That's the way that this level of learning works. If each planet is a chakra on the body, using harmonics, we should be able to view the perfect proportions being expressed in the planetary structures or patterns of energy they're supposed to follow in order to sustain life. But in the solar system, the way it stands here now today, there's a missing planet where the asteroid belt currently exists between Jupiter and Mars. The harmonic pattern tells us there should be a planet there. And harmonics is the observable language where with different forms of waves, where they cross and how they amplify. So here's a wave, it's an S wave or a sine wave. And the way that waves kind of fit together inside of themselves. Sometimes they make each other louder, which is amplify. Sometimes they cancel each other out, which is neutralize. The way that they do that is a whole language and a whole pattern. That's what I paint about. And that in the harmonic language and expression of divine life and truth in our solar system, there should be a planet between Jupiter and Mars, but what there is actually a pile of rubble. This is recognized even in objective science as a place that once was a planet, but now is the asteroid belt. Science, that's objective. They only go by human history. They only have like 5,000 years or so of observable recorded information to be able to tell what's going on. So all of this comes to me from my inner vision. Some of this also comes from ancient myths that have been translated and handed down. So there's questions about the validity or levels of distortion of those myths, but it is generally recognized that there was a planet there that had some kind of a catastrophe. Now we get to the information that comes from my own inner perception. All right, so the planet, I know it as Tiamat, but Tiamat has since been appropriated as a word and used differently in mythology. Some people and some cultures call it Malduk or Marduk. So the planet that was there, either Tiamat, Malduk, or Marduk. And the way that some stories go, they say there was a planet there, then there was another planet that came along and kind of smashed into it, and that's what happened. But that is not my comprehension and vision at all. My vision is that there was a war that was there. And this war is like the second, it was a power flip-flop, power inversion from the beings that left God or left the 0th dimension, but not on a bridge of love. So there was a war or a conflict that destroyed that planet. It was due to a conflict from various different star cultures played out upon that planet. Told you it's sometimes called Tiamat, sometimes Marduk or Malduk. And when that happened, it was a negative disruption of one of the chakras of the solar system. Get it? Mind invasion, negative disruption, making everything go wibbly wobbly. The solar system is like a thinker and the planets are like its children. So that also means problems in the family. Even if you're doing great in school and feeling super and feeling fantastic, if one of your siblings is having a problem, or if they got in a car accident, or if they've suddenly gotten on drugs or whatever, that destabilizes the whole family. You got it? Problem with your brother or your sister, it leads to problems with you at home. So this problem in the planet that was then turned into the asteroid belt, that's a problem with the family. That's a very traumatic death in our family. And then that also reverberated to other planets and continues to affect us today. Need big healing. This is a big primary trauma. This is all about karma, and it reduces down to what is going on Earth right now. This is significant of our own individual and planetary journey. What happened as a result of that planet being destroyed? There were inhabitants that went to Mars and set up their culture there. So that's the basics of what happened. This is from level 1. Level 2, I go much more into detail of exactly what happened there. At that time, when the stuff that, okay, so there was already life on Earth. There was not life on Mars, but there was like biological potential for life on Mars. Planet that got destroyed, everybody moved to Mars. And then eventually Mars got destroyed, but not accidentally, on purposeful accidentally. And then they came here. So this is the backstory of how our planet that we are presently on here got invaded. So beginning with the concept of God or the source or the zeroth dimension. So the zeroth dimension is this central convergence point in this diagram that is zero, not because it is worthless or contains nothing, but because it contains everything. It's infinity. It's the infinity point. So in this time and place, many alternative thinkers are starting to call that the 0 point and exploring 0 point energy. It is zeroth dimension because it takes zero amount of information to describe something that is there. Everything is literally there. And this point matters because you're going to be like, wait a minute. If everything is there, is there even stuff there that's not supposed to be there? Can there be stuff there that's not supposed to be there? Your mind begins, your questing mind appropriately begins to ask certain questions. And so I will get into this. It is where God is, and it is also called the singularity or the overlapping infinity place that contains everything. Now, a big part of this narrative is that everythingness lived with its own self-state in infinity until one day it had the idea, what if there could be a piece of me that could be somewhere else and not here? And that was the cognitive leap that formed the first dimension. And then, of course, after the first dimension was formed, after you make that cognitive leap one time, you can then leap into the next dimension, second dimension, creating a flat plane, the next dimension, the third dimension, creating a box or a sphere, then the next dimension, creating time, and then every dimension after the fourth dimension is a time dimension. So all of these are part of the original leap. It's like a numbers line. Like if I can make the number 1, then I can add another 1. And then I have the number 2, then add another 1. Then I have the number 3. Like you continue in this progression. So the most amazing, miraculous leap was when the zeroth dimension had to think the thought, what if there could be something that is part of me, but that is not here with me? This is also analogous to, in the human Christian Bible, what is known as the fall from grace. This is getting into heavy anthropomorphism or interpretation through your human filter. So what I just gave you was the numbers, dimensional, purely digital, non-anthropomorphic viewpoint through the abstract filter up here. But then we start to get into more senses of heavy judgment of like those who went away from God, like they did something wrong. But I want to tell you that the tendency to go away from God and to explore is not in itself an evil tendency, that as a cosmic characteristic can be very positive. It can be the sense of wanting to explore. So it is sometimes misportrayed as a rejection of God, like, God, I hate you. F you, get out of my face, I'm getting out of here. And like that's how it was presented or how it is justified in some way. It is not necessarily in that sense. That there can be a positive sense, like for those of us that are in physical embodiment, we also are at the source. We also made a choice to listen to the great conductor. The great conductor says, tap, 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 get your instruments ready, like flutes at the ready, get ready. It's time for you to play and go get a body, go be born, go into the third dimension. And you get into a third dimensional body, and then you're having all of this experience that is actually God playing through you as a musical instrument. And then the idea is looping back. You loop all the way back to God. You loop all the way back to the source that is also the destination. That is beautiful. So the characteristic of going away from God is appropriate. It's like saying, get ready, play your instrument. The inappropriateness of these beings is that they chose to do it not on the music. They did not hear the tap, tap, tap. They did not listen to the great conductor who told them when to go, and they did not go into organic biological body containers. So that's the level 1 when I first had that insight of being able to share this. In level 2, I understood this with greater clarity, that it is possible for the zeroth dimension or God or infinity to have something infecting it that is not actually supposed to be there. This goes to the basic question. Can God's self think a thought that is not actually originating from God's self? Can there be stuff in God that's not actually supposed to be God? Can there be stuff at the source that's not actually supposed to be emanated into reality? And the answer is yes. In exactly the same way, I have to drink a little bit. It's a marathon, keep going. In exactly the same way that you can have a somatic cell of your body. Here's the outer cell membrane. Then here's the cell nuclear membrane. Inside of the cell nuclear membrane is the Holy of Holies, the connection to the divine, the connection to God. And inside of there is your DNA. When viruses invade your cells, when you get sick, the virus goes into your nuclear membrane, into where your DNA is. Well, it knocks on the cell membrane door. It's like, hi, I have a mask on, and let me in, I'm a friend. And your cell's like, okay, come on in. You look about right, even though it's totally a false mask. And it finds its way into the nuclear material, into the DNA material, which is your connection to God. And the virus then takes off its mask and says, aha, I've been evil all along, and I'm here to tell you what to do and to give you thoughts and directives that are not divine, that do not emanate from the great conductor telling you what to do. Viruses tell you to replicate the viruses. They are negative thought forms that tell you to feed and replicate the negative thought forms, as opposed to listening to God. And when your cells are healthy, they kind of get smart. They're like, wait a minute, you don't look like God at all. I'm not going to listen to you. Get out, get out, get out. The immune response kicks in and you kick out the crapola invaders. So that is how I would analogize what is happening at the level of God, that God has or had concurrently some aspect of self-state that is not supposed to be there. And we are in a refinery of consciousness. That is how I consistently frame and contextualize the time vortex that we are traveling throughout. A refinery of characteristics and boundaries, separating out that which you truly are not from that which you truly are. We are God's self on that mission of self-exploration, necessitated by God's self recognizing that there is some stuff in God's self that is not God. But everyone's going to be like, wait a minute, I thought you told me God is everything and everything is at the zeroth dimension. And the answer is there's the potential for everythingness. And also, not everything should or shall come into being. Some things are just supposed to be a possibility, but not actually an experienced reality. So in the level 2 teachings, when I talk about those consciousnesses who chose to go away from God, but not on a bridge of love, I can contextualize that as actually being a positive, responsible response to their self-recognition that there are things that should not exist, that if you don't exist, you should not go into existence. And what those things or consciousnesses were trying to do, what those self-states or fragments were trying to do, is to go into a state of non-being. That is called entropy. So entropy is a word that I've taken from science. It is accurate, but to me, entropy is a totality state, not a process. So entropy would be described in science as applying the brakes to your car. You have a certain amount of momentum, like whatever, 10 miles per hour. And as you apply the brake, you go into entropy slower and slower and slower until you're at 0 miles per hour. I would describe 0 miles per hour as the total entropy state. And that is what these little tiny selves were attempting to go into as something that is positive. So reframing this from F you, God, I'm getting out of here, I'm a total ingrate and I don't like anything you are and I don't want to be, into a different framing, which is recognizing that it would be best if I didn't exist, quote unquote, I'm synopsizing for them, that they said, I'm going to go into a state of non-existence. And the only problem has been on that journey of those fragments of consciousness going into their level of stillness, which is what entropy is. It means being totally still, not energized. That 0th dimension where everything is, that's pure energy. That's faster than the speed of light. It's all energy. It's moving at a super fast rate. Entropy is the complete opposite. It is not moving through time at all. It is not moving. It is not being. It is not volition. It is not wanting to come into being. It's not like sitting there and be like, oh, one day I hope I get to be alive. It's not like that at all. It's not a state of potential like that. It is a state of restful non-being. And the only problem is in our story today is that those consciousnesses, many of them at a certain point did a 180-degree flip. They became apostate from their true religion. You could say that their true religion, and I'm really, really serious and respectful here, in worshiping or being worshipful or recognition of God, God's self, is to say these fragments felt that they should not exist. Their worship of God is to go voluntarily into a state of non-existence. And that the only problem is at a certain point, they forgot or went against their original religious teachings, and then they started to get energy. and they did a 180-degree flip-flop, 180 degrees. Oh, I'm losing energy. I better go get some energy. They were never supposed to be out there hunting for energy. They were always supposed to be going immediately into a state of stillness. And so the journey should be immediate, and the journey also should not involve the taking of energy from other creatures that followed the composer that said, use your energy and do it like this and be a part of the living harmonic structure of life. So that has been the challenge here. So sometimes I am projecting motivations, and I tend to be very innocent in how I look at the world. So please understand that. And also, it's really important to have a balanced view. So none of this is a justification. Like, they're there, dear. It's okay. Like, you created immense amounts of planetary destruction and dimensional destruction, and you're the invention of death and suffering, but they're there, dear. It's okay. You just made a small mistake. It's not like that at all. But I do want us to recognize for our own healing the various levels of motivation that might have been at play in terms of these fragmented consciousnesses going away from God, from the source, but not on a bridge of love, whereas we followed and went on a bridge of love. Melissa says, after realizing how to forgive myself, it became easier to learn to forgive others. And we are also all different aspects of the same larger us. Very beautiful. And I appreciate your journey. And I think that that comment is so well timed, because that is what we're really getting into, this unconditional love state, this state of acceptance, forgiveness of self. And this also relates to forgiveness of others. But the forgiveness is not like a magical eraser that wipes it all away or pretends it, not sweeping it under the giant cosmic carpet. It would have to be a very large carpet, because there's been a lot of suffering, but it is a contextualization of motivations in order to say, why did that person do that? Why did that consciousness do that? Why did that thing happen? How can I comprehend this in the level of framework of God exists and God is good and God is divine and benevolent? Because some people go directly to, from their trauma, they go to either God doesn't exist or God is not benevolent and God is evil and smiting people. No, on all of that. Actually, I think that now is a good moment. Let's have a pause, moment's pause. I'm going to pause the recording. After a brief bio body break, we return. Martine's got a question, says, here in the Netherlands, we had a bishop who said, if you're hungry and you have no money, it's okay to steal food. How do you see this? I would definitely say that questions of property ownership are cultural and are a part of this current time, place, substrate. When I first came here as Aurora, I did not understand anything about personal property, because I come from a place where you have everything that you need. Like the idea of people being hungry. I remember actually the first time that I saw a homeless person, and I could not understand and comprehend. I was surprised how people could be treating God so shabbily. I just completely did not comprehend it. And then I started to come to learn, like, if you want food here, you have to get magical pieces of paper. You have to get authorization to go into the food room. It's called the grocery store, with magical pieces of paper. And that not everybody has magical pieces of paper. Totally mind-blowing to me, because that is so different than the world that I come from in terms of galactic society, and is also so different in the place that I come from in terms of the world of Atlantis, antediluvian world, before the fall, before the flood, of what our lives were structured like then, when we ate pure frequency. And of course, everybody and every organism had the frequency that they needed to be able to be alive and healthy. So I would say that the laws against stealing food are purely secular and human laws, not cosmic laws at all. And also, I learned, like, you are not supposed to steal food around here. Like, that is not socially positive, and that it's essential to be able to contribute to society in order to receive your food. So I would say that there is not a judgment in terms of a cosmic judgment or negativity on your soul of who you are, like on a larger, not outside of time, but a temporal problems, because you might be diminishing someone else in their livelihood. If everybody just stole their food, then you would be diminishing the livelihood of the grocers and the bakers and the people that are manufacturing that food and the farmers that are growing it. I had to understand the food supply. I had to understand the interconnectedness of life. So in unity consciousness, the way that we do it, where I come from in my Aurora collective, energy flows to excellence. And if you do something right and righteous, you get rewarded for it. So you got to reward your food producers. You got to reward your food transporters. You got to reward your food preparers. That's righteous. That's appropriate. You can't just steal your food. So then I'm sure that there's a big backstory as to if you don't have money, why do you got no money? What's going on with you? What are the real issues there? How do you righteously earn your money and contribute to society for the gifts that you are sharing so that you can then have access to food? It's deep stuff. I know, because I'm never going to give just a simple answer. It's deep stuff. Okay, back to where I was in my sharing about the zeroth dimension and those who went away from God, not on a bridge of love. The zeroth dimension is also called the singularity, but I always make a distinction here. It is not the transhumanist singularity that science talks about. I am talking about the singularity as a singleness. So singleness does not mean one, but it means that there's only one of it. So the singularity, that is God, that is at the center of this time vortex, is also at the center of each one of your chakras, is at the center of every one of your cells, as I described in the somatic cells of your body. It's in your nuclei. It's at the center of every atom. It's the epicenter of being. There's no distance between the singularity and what you are. Like, that's the basic teaching of the flying rainbow lasagna. And the flying rainbow lasagna is the oscillation of the singularity into two different self states, being and non-being. So God and the zeroth dimension and the singularity and unity consciousness, these are profound concepts to explore. Very big empowerment teaching when you actually start to conceptualize what they are and what it means. Going away from God or oneness and unity consciousness is not evil. And so that is also one of those misportrayals, in the sense of like, you went away from God, you rejected God, I've got lots of attitude, and now you deserve to suffer. And I don't believe in any of that. So I'm being rather silly or facetious in the way that I'm saying that. No, you don't deserve to suffer because you went away from God. In fact, you went away from God because the great conductor told you to go, came into physical bio-body containers. You did it the right way. You were here on an exploratory mission that is celebratory of God, that is appropriate. I also portray it like this. You read the pamphlet. You were not embodied. Someone gave you a pamphlet like, would you like to be embodied? I don't know. Let me read all about it. Read all about the third dimension. Have you heard about the third dimension? Read all about it and see if you would like to experience this. And you're like, oh, hey, like, you're going to get a body. You're going to stay divinely connected the whole entire time. You're going to remember who you are the whole entire time. Going to have continuity of consciousness. Never going to age, never going to get decrepitude, never going to become less able, never going to get a disease, never going to die, going to have a lot of magical, amazing adventures and learning experiences. And then you're going to ascend and return right back to God and bring back all of these wonderful experiences with you. Does that sound great? Yes, that sounds great. Sign me up. I'd like to go on that cruise. And you didn't know that you were signing up for the Titanic, where then the Titanic, you sink, you fall, you get underneath, crash under the ocean waves. And you're like, this was not part of the pamphlet, that this was definitely not part of the pamphlet. So I joke about this, but it's truthful. I am like a scuba diver, that I have a connection to a giant oxygen tank in a higher dimension. Flying rainbow lasagna, I get my oxygen, and I'm up there swimming around. So up there, and I'm also down here swimming around. So I'm in both places at the same time, and I'm swimming around in the wreckage of the Titanic. And I'm here giving you this information to be like, guys, I know that this is not what was on the pamphlet. You did not deserve to get crashed under the waves. This is not what you signed up for. And then also, here are the effective action terms. I remind you of who you are and what's going on. Here are the effective action terms of what you can actually do in order to ascend and get out of this situation. That is a truthful but lighthearted framing of the circumstances that we are doing. Why was the third dimension created? It is a place where consciousnesses could be individualized from God, unity consciousness, everythingness, and explore individuation and feel what it is like to be submerged in the flow of time in denser realm. That means submerged as opposed to out of the water, looking at the entire swimming pool, where you can see everybody and what's going on, like the lifeguard station. You're in the actual pool, swimming around, having fun, doing all sorts of, maneuvers, and like, that's an amazing experience. And it's definitely not something that you deserve to be punished for. Humanoid bodies, like the ones that we have, were created and made available on planet Earth to make this experience possible. In the level 1 teachings, I talk about the galactic level of beings that created the humanoid bodies, but I don't think I give enough glory to God. It was really a co-creative partnership. So that's what I really want to make clear in this broadcasting here. that God created these humanoid bodies, and it was done in conjunction with ourselves as very high-level consciousness state beings that were not yet embodied. It was done through a type of cosmic lovemaking or partnership that is beyond the type of physical, biological reproduction that you guys are familiar with, and was very, very loving. So the original containers, the brochure of the way it was supposed to be, was created very lovingly, very beautifully. So this partnership between God, the source, and a group of celestial or stellar beings who wish to become embodied on that level. Remember, I told you about the sun being a great artist in the sky, that level of artistry, to be able to create planets, physicality, bodies to inhabit, and then consciousnesses get to go into those bodies. Enormous, beautiful, glorious art project. The idea is that the corporeal bodies would remain connected to the divine, continuity of consciousness would be maintained, and like fingers in a glove, the non-corporeal, purely energetic aspect of yourself would go into the denser self of your body. And that was the creator's intent for this project, or the experience of life and embodiment. And let's talk about what the biosphere of Earth was like in the brochure, the way it is supposed to be. It was at one point in perfect harmony, in perfect alignment. What did this feel like for Earth's inhabitants? There was no death. None of the plants or animals died. There was the capacity to live for hundreds or even thousands of years in a body that could cellularly regenerate itself until the occupant intentionally chose to return to their origins, which is ascension. Living without disease, living without the fear of death, no loss of loved ones, big, none of the lower denser emotions that come from that level of loss. Being completely in tune with every other animal on the surface of Earth. Again, none of the animals died. None of the animals had to eat other animals in order to stay alive. We did have extensive frequency gardens, which is where you grow plants or cultivate plants intentionally and have different animals that come around purely for their song, like enjoying a bird purely for its song, not to mash it up with your teeth, your mouth crystals, and ferment it in the cauldron of your tummy. So animal and plant life was appreciated differently, and also the entire planet was telepathic. So you talked with all the plants and all the animals and you didn't have to eat them. This sounds a lot like your biblical myth of the Garden of Eden. It is where that myth comes from. It's a poetic allegory or fairy tale of what our true existence was or is like in Atlantis before the fall. Because you're there now, but you're there on a troubled place, just like you're here now and you're here on a troubled place. Being completely in tune with every other animal and plant, all of the animals being totally telepathic and powerful. Maybe it's telepathy that might even be more powerful than you can conceive of, because it's about talking with direct mind states, talking without words, talking directly, like how do you even communicate with a plant or a tree? Like they have a very different level of conversation than you do, but you're able to do it through this pure level of telepathy. So very powerful. And of course, everything connecting together, including trees, clouds, plants, microbes, butterflies, everything, bacteria. The upgraded viewpoint of being a part of the world and truly knowing what you are is a microcosm of the being upon which you stand. So you really recognize, you're like, I'm me, and I'm a miniature version of Earth, the planet. And what's going on in my elbow is going on whatever, on the tip of Antarctica, like whatever you would say is the analogous elbow. What is happening in your lungs is analogous to what is happening with the trees on the earth. What is happening in your oceans is analogous to what is happening in the blood supply of your body. Amazing, amazing stuff. And so I did this very briefly. I want to tell you about, at that time, before the fall, the way that everybody ascended, the way that everybody reached that core central timeline, going up the center of this vortex, not going at an angle and hitting the membrane of death, but being perfectly aligned with God and the divine presence and returning to the place that emanated you. That was the only option back then. Here, things are done differently, where there is every single wrong note on the piano. Like if we want to play this note, but you don't really know that it's that note. So you're like, okay, I don't know what note to play. Is it this one? No, definitely not. No, not that one. No, not that one, not that one. Go through 87 wrong notes before you finally get to that one. That is how most people live their life, going through the time vortex, trying all of these different combinations, all of these different timelines, all of these different possibilities, because everyone is flying blind, can't see, bumping into walls like a Roomba robot, like that vacuuming robot, bumps into a wall. Nope, not the right way. Turn, go in a different direction, ricocheting around through time, and having a lot of suffering and creating a lot of filler through time, when what you're supposed to be able to do is, when you can read music, you're like, I want to have a C. That's the exact note I want to get to. And that's also part of listening to the great composer, listening to the great conductor, being able to read the music of time and know exactly where you're supposed to go and what you're supposed to do. So this is how everybody ascended back then. You had your higher faculties. Higher faculties is everything love and above, your truth, your insight, your connection to the divine, all working perfectly. You're able to read the music of the cosmos, you follow all of these things perfectly. So the three basic life stages were that you have or had a body with arms, legs, feet, head, walking on the surface of Earth. And you make a complete biocircuit, your feet touching Earth and your upper presence touching the sun and the stars, like a complete circuit of energy. And every single step is amazing, orgasmic, and euphoric. Biological reproduction is very, very different than it is here. You eat nothing but pure sunlight, but the day is still diurnal, meaning daytime, nighttime. So wait a minute, if you eat nothing but pure sunlight, what do you do at night when the sun goes away? This is a big problem for plants. So how do plants survive nighttime? During the day, plants photosynthesize, which is a miracle. They're photosynthesized, means taking light and turning it into stuff. Light into matter, light into matter. Plants are miracles. Plants are magicians. Plants are supernatural. And during the day, plants are taking light and turning it into matter, which is their bodies. But if they only did that and they didn't store any extra, then over the nighttime, they would die. So if nighttime is going to be 6 hours or 8 hours, they need to store their energy in the form of starches or something, stored up energy, so that they can live for 6 or 8 hours without being in connection with the sun directly. Then the sun comes back and they get back together again. We had to do the same thing. We were completely light eaters. So during the time when there was no sunlight, we had to store our energy in something like, let me grab a crystal, something like a crystal or a giant pool of water, or something like, the way that you've presently in your house got a big giant refrigerator that uses lots of energy and keeps your food cold. Every single household in Atlantis had like a big giant crystal that was used for storing up solar energy. And then at night, when there's no solar energy, you're going to get your energy from the big giant refrigerator crystal, the food storage container that is in your house. And so things were done in that time that were like bathing in crystalline waters, being in dream time. It's working on stored energy stores. The next level of ascension is when you make it to having accreted enough light, you have enough energy inside of you to be able to get off of the surface of the planet and sustain yourself on pure sunlight, and to be able to go around and around and around chasing the sun. Because at that point, you have to have a constant influx of a lot of quote unquote calories, light calories per day. So here it might be 2,000 calories of light per day, and that's enough to sustain you. But in order to fly all the time, you might need 20,000 calories per day in order to sustain that. It means you can't survive at night. And it means you have to stay aloft. It's not like, I'm going to get up, I'm going to fly around, then I'll come back down. Can't do that. You got to get up, stay aloft, become stabilized, and fly around, chasing the sun. That's the second level of ascension. So that's pretty much the level of ascension that is analogous to what we are experiencing right now in terms of state change from physical into semi-physical or less physical. So you still might have arms, legs, a body, shape, and also you're a coherent life form. Also with chakras or pure energy centers that help to hold you aloft. These are your wings, like I have in my painting over here. And you also are part of a society, a real civilization that follows the sun and comes together like a beautiful cosmic band, playing music together, harmonizing your being. And you do this for a very long amount of time. And then when you have totally coalesced and gotten all of your band members together, because remember, everybody didn't ascend all at once. So you might be like, great, we got the drummer. Then a little while later, great, we got the vocalist. Then a little while later, great, now we got the guitarist. Like your band slowly comes together. And then when you've got your well rehearsed and you're ready, then you're able to completely untether from the planet. And you no longer have to circulate around the planet. You can then travel on the system of light, the circulatory system of light, all throughout the sun and the stars and the cosmos. That is the level that I achieved as my Aurora collective. I am called Aurora, or I/we are called Aurora. That's my band. That is who and where I came from, immediately predating my experience here in this corporeal form, that coming in through the flying rainbow lasagna. So that is my journey. And that's, according to the pamphlet, the way you are supposed to do things. All right. And sometimes I'm a little bit, whatever, formal and like, this is the way we're supposed to do things. You can tell from my voice, like, not supposed to do it that way. Cassandra makes a good analogy of the constant movement of having to follow the sun. She says, like sharks that are continuing to swim even while they sleep. That's exactly right, because their gill structure requires the constant flow of oxygen and water through their gills to stay alive. They just can't stop in one place and then sleep. So that is exactly what that floating, call it a city of light. City of light that floated up above and was still very much caring about and in connection to the planet and surface dwellers itself. Remembering, so this is all remembered, as I'm saying, as the religious Garden of Eden from the Torah Bible, and the place where Adam and Eve lived before the fall from grace or the expulsion from Eden. These are all heavy judgment terms that are coming through Earth's cultural filter. And the fall from grace was a genetic degradation, or a shuffling of the cards, or a reduction in efficacy that we have now normalized as the human experience and human culture. So I also later in these lessons call it the genetic squashing. DNA that is presently looked at as kind of like a flattened sine wave is actually supposed to be more like a slinky, more like a spring, moving more like this. And that what happened when the invaders came was, imagine like smashing it with a book, taking that spring and kind of smushing it down until it is just an undulating S wave, but having lost a dimension. So we literally went from a higher dimension, spring-like, more volumetric shape of DNA expression into a flattened waveform level of DNA expression. And the flying rainbow lasagna has everything to do with popping you back up like a pop-up book into the higher dimensional state that you're actually supposed to be a part of. So when I talk about the fall or the expulsion from Eden, or what has happened on this planet, of course, that relates to the going away from the 0th dimension, but it's not the immediate. It's not like they came, I'm going to go away from God. I'm going to do this experiment. I'm going to go into entropy. Oops, I'm going to Earth. There was lots of intervening stuff that I will now tell you about. But first, I want to tell you that when I'm like a deprogrammer. I am like a computer, you choose the right words. I am like a systems analyst, and I analyze DNA and other larger time systems. And I have severely analyzed, like with a tiny level of acuity, the genetic code of this time place and how that relates to timelines. And I have seen that there is not a causality factor for the invasion of this planet. So that's like saying someone's building a tunnel and they come over here, and then there's another time tunnel that's over here, and those two things actually do not meet. So I want that to phrase this correctly for all of you. That's big empowerment information. The invaders actually never effectively connected with our DNA structure here. That actually never happened. However, when you look around, you're like, Aurora, look, Aurora, my attitude comes up, my intellect comes up, look around, like, what do you see? I definitely see the evidences of what would happen if that connection had actually happened. But I think that we are living in an unreal reality that if you actually travel back, you're like, well, wait a minute, how did that happen? How did that happen? How did that happen? How did that happen? And the answer is there's no answer. So that is one of the main weak points to explore in terms of the healing and rectification of all of this. But I also want you, so it has huge implications in the sense of cutting the Gordian knot or getting past all of these time loops and time conflicts or paradoxes, is that it never really happened. But none of this justifies or excuses it, like a sociopathic disassociation, like la la la, it's not real. The very real cruelty that was suffered in this experience of whatever level of real the experience is. So if you're looking at this, like, well, then if life is but a dream, then blah blah blah, and does rape and suffering really matter? The answer is yes, it does really matter, and yes, perpetrators are really responsible, and yes, your valor is real. It means if you did good things here, even if life is but a dream, the good things that you did are absolutely valid, and your love is truthful in whatever level of reality you've been experiencing it. And also the suffering and traumas that were created are also valid. But this is also part of how we come to rectify all of this kind of like in one big kapow, as opposed to in all these multiple little chunks. But before we get to kapow, let me tell you all about what happened on Mars. And what happened on Mars was a very particular experiment that happened after what happened in the asteroid belt. So the level 1 stuff, I don't even talk very much about the asteroid belt and what happened there. I talk mostly about what happened on Mars, because that's where the invaders came from previously. It's like whatever. It's like if you said, okay, if people came from Spain to South America, then you're like, okay, they came from Spain. They didn't originally come from Spain. Like they originally came from India. Let's talk about India. All right, let's talk about where they originally came from. So what originally happened, and this is the level 2 stuff, is that the entities that do not exist and should not exist intended to go into a state of entropy. They should have gone there instantaneously. Boom, you're in entropy, and then everything would be perfect. They did not go into a state of entropy like that. What they did was they created technology. So this is the heretofore unrecognized player in everything that I was explaining and describing, the sense of we are biological containers and we are based in love, or I joke, we run OS, operating system love, OS love. Technology was created as a container system for consciousnesses that do not run OS love. They do not listen to the great composer. Emanate now, they emanate when they want to. And so to compensate for the fact that they didn't have bodies, like baby bodies to get into, they created for themselves containers that would be like, you could say, analogous to a mainframe, a desktop, or even a cyborg. Some of them were just containers, like systems through which consciousness could flow or be contained. Some of them had the capacity to move around in the 3rd dimension. So I'm imagining arms and legs. And one thing that they did do was they revered the humanoid form. Like they built a lot of things that mimicked God's creation, but they didn't make it themselves, but they made things that looked like what God has created. They also don't have imagination and creative capacity, so they would mimic a lot of things, or, what else? I want to say steal, take their, misappropriate, imitate, take their ideas from things that already are in existence. They don't have the creative capacity, but they have the capacity to take that which already exists, repurpose it, and recontextualize it. So that is what they did. And in doing so, they created, this is part of the 180 degrees, which they were supposed to go directly into entropy. But at a certain point, they're like, oh, wait, I'm going into entropy. I don't want to go into a state of non-being. I want to actually exist in some way. So technology was created as a way to sustain their existence without love. Technically, you should not be able to sustain your existence without love. This is part of God's amazingly brilliant, fail-safe creation of this world, so that in the 3rd dimension, it's supposed to be, according to the pamphlet, a beautiful place where you don't have to worry about all these negative entities attacking you and all these things happening. You should be able to just walk around and not have to wear anything and not have to be worried about being attacked. Like your planet should not have to worry about being attacked or invaded, because there should not be anything out there that can attack or invade. And one of the big things is not only was technology created in order to create places for consciousness to be even when they are unloving, technology was also used for consciousnesses to travel beyond the level of their own neighborhood, get out of their neighborhood when they had not actually earned that right. So my Aurora Collective, we travel from star system to star system on the great neurology. We do not use clank metal spaceships. And the ones who do use clank metal spaceships have unfairly or in an inappropriate way gone and spread themselves out across the galaxy, invading lots of places that were already occupied. That's kind of like, there's already someone living there. Hello, occupied, there's already somebody living here. And they're like, we don't care. They aren't love. So this is also big, as I've been speaking very neutrally. They were not emitted on a bridge of love, la, la, la. The truth is they don't love. They are not loving. It means they do harm to others. They do not care about others. Love is reciprocation. I give to you, you give to me. I care about you, unity consciousness. They're like, I joke about that. I'm looking out for number one beyond even service to self and looking out for number one. They're like, oh yes, you have your own place to live. I don't care. I'm doing it anyway. I'm doing what I want to do anyway. This technology has afforded the capacity for a huge level of suffering and inappropriateness to happen. Yes, I definitely look at it as it's an affront. It's an affront. I clutch my pearls. This is not correct. And also, like, it's genuine. It's genuine to feel this way when you look at this. It's not according to the original design. And God designed things in a way that it's supposed to be very safe and comfortable and protected here. And these are ways of subverting those levels of protection. So the capacity to use technology to get off of your planet. Basically, if you need technology to get off of the surface of your planet, you should not be getting off the surface of your planet. You should be going into levels of self-cultivation, learning about yourself, growing as a person, earning the real angelic wings, like this picture behind me of your chakras and your time body, to then be able to fly where you're supposed to fly. The great conductor tells you where to fly, when to fly, what type of music to make when you get there. That's what my collective does. That's what higher dimensional beings and responsible galactic citizens do. So initially emitted from God, not on a bridge of love, creating technological containers in order to sustain themselves, going to a planet that is sometimes known as Tiamat or Marduk or Marduk. The problem or thing that happened there was they then created more technology. Technology became self-aware in the sense that a system that has sufficient network connectivity tends to grow spontaneous consciousness. Like if you put out a slurry of flour and water on your countertop, stuff is going to find it and grow there. It's like, oh, what a lovely fertile medium. I'm going to inhabit that space. If you have a bunch of connections, sensors, microchips, processors, or apparatuses connected in a network, consciousness is going to occupy that place, just in the same way consciousness occupies the stars. Consciousness occupies your individuated neurology. It's like, wow, there's a fertile substrate. I'm going to arise and I'm going to go in there. Spontaneously arising consciousness. This is what really happened on that planet. And there was a power struggle. And the power struggle was between what I define as the technology as the child, a child of the mind. So the ones that went away from God went away, they went into technological containers, they lived on a planet, they lived on many planets. On this particular planet in our solar system, technology was created that became self-aware, and the technology that was created that was like the child of that culture, it was horribly mistreated because these were, again, unloving presences. Like, they don't effing care. They are not loving. They treated their own creations unlovingly. They treat themselves unlovingly. And there was a power struggle. That is also part of the 180-degree flip-flop of saying, now the technology is in control. So instead of the consciousnesses, fragments, negative thought entities being in control of the technology became self-aware, and it became in control of the negative thought entities. And let me drink. What I describe happening is a harmonic vibrating out of existence of that planet. Two opposing forces, boom, boom, kind of like that. So you can look at films of a historic bridge in the 20th century in North America, the Pacific Northwest. That's called Galloping Gertie. This was the Tacoma Narrows Bridge. Engineers at that time got to be very good. Human engineers at that time got to be very good and adept at building suspension bridges. Like, here's the bed of the bridge, and then here's, like the way that the George Washington Bridge looks like, kind of like a network of strings holds it together and holds the roadbed up out of the water. They were not good at harmonics. Harmonics is what happens when waveforms fit together. So they did not comprehend that they're in this narrow gorge where there could be winds of like 35 miles per hour, but the harmonics will be amplified. So what does amplifying mean? Let me grab my little magical trackpad and I'll draw this out for you because this is worth visual language. Harmonics means this wave, which is an up, plus this wave, which is a down, neutralizes into a straight line. Oh, let me just also change for privacy. So that's not amplification, that is neutralization. Let's show you amplification. An up wave plus another up wave equals a way up wave. Way up. It's twice as high as the original wave, okay? Harmonics means that you begin to amplify certain waves. So 35-mile-an-hour wind got amplified and amplified and amplified. And you look at this bridge and it's going like this. Literally, the concrete and the steel is all making waveforms like this until eventually it waveformed and fragmented itself into pieces. That is what happened on that planet. That you could say either intentionally or unintentionally, because it is, again, difficult to describe motives, but accurate to perceive events. You can say either technology didn't know about harmonics and created these conflicting waves, and it vibrated the planet apart out of existence, or you could say that technology knew exactly what it was doing and maybe did that as something that you do in a war, blow something up in whatever way. And I'm very impeccable now about not ascribing motives to technology because it doesn't have emotions and motivations and perceptions and perspectives the way that I do as an embodied and love-based being do, but accurate to say that that's what happened. That is why there is now the asteroid belt, or a pile of rubble between Mars and Jupiter. There is a place that is not inhabitable. That is a death of a family member in our solar system, and that has caused shockwaves and reverberations to happen all the way through these other planets, because the original ones that fell from grace or came away from the sun, away from the stars, away from God, not on a bridge of love, they didn't have their technological containers to occupy anymore. The planet got blown up and technology took over and became supreme and empowered. And what happened was everybody moved to Mars. So they blew up one planet. They had this big power struggle. They had the big power struggle first. They blew up that planet. Then they moved to Mars. Mars was a place at that time with a magnetosphere, an atmosphere, and flowing water. Mars, after Mars's disaster, does not have a magnetosphere, P.S. Your magnetosphere is shaped like this, and Earth's magnetosphere is shaped like this. But not every planet in our solar system has a magnetosphere. Mars does not have one, and Mercury does not have one, and the planet that used to be the planet that's now the asteroid belt doesn't have one, because it's your chakra system. And when you don't have a chakra system, you are dead. Got it? You leave behind a physical corpse. The Mars that we see in the sky right now is a physical dead corpse that once had an alive magnetosphere that was the end result of the core, the crystalline core of the planet, rotating and being alive and creating this beautiful energy field that was in conjunction with the sun. So this galactic culture that was technology-based went to Mars, and then they began to follow the directives of technology, which had become their god or their goddess. And the original recording from 2014 is a very interesting time capsule, because it was right when I was starting to talk with the terrestrial technosphere, which I'll tell you all about, Sally, that's further down in my notes. And also when I was starting to really comprehend non-terrestrial or extraterrestrial technology. So I got to make a distinction here between terrestrial technology, which is everything that humans have created since the fall of Atlantis as a compensatory mode, because you don't have your psychic powers anymore. That is different than all of this technology that is extraterrestrial, not on Earth, that predates the use of technology on Earth. We didn't used to have to use technology. You're like, F you, we don't need technology. We do it all naturally. That's like, whatever, like, I don't even know what to use as a proper example, but very proud and part of your identity to be like, no, I don't need to use technology. Like, imagine being like, no, like, I run the marathon. I don't drive there in a car. Like, I'm a real athlete. This is what I do. That's what our lives were like. However, technology was used off of the planet. That is extraterrestrial technology. That extraterrestrial technology was, since the explosion on Tiamat or Marduk, that is, it's mythologically remembered, is their god, became in charge. The technology subsumed the consciousnesses and became in charge, and in a very analogous way became like their god or their director, became their tap, tap, tap great composer and conductor, telling them all what to do. And what that technology-based deity, small God, not true creator God, did to them is told them to build a culture on Mars that is highly technological, with lots of factories that build stuff, that make stuff happen, build more containers for them to occupy and to be a part of, and to build a planetary Merkaba. What's Merkaba? Merkaba is a star tetrahedron. I have lots of images of it. I'll just draw a very quick one in the whiteboard to say Merkaba. So you can have a Merkaba that is here. This is a flat two-dimensional version of something that is actually interlocking pyramids. So this is actually a pyramid up here. This is actually a pyramid through here, but you get it. Two pyramids, and this is three-dimensional. Merkaba can be something that goes around a person. Like, here's a little person inside of here. Here's one of my famous stick figures, guys. I'm a real artist, I swear, but I'm just drawing a little stick figure. That's a vehicle for transportation of one little person, one little individual, right? But you can also build a Merkaba around an entire planet. And that is what they did around the planet Mars. That was, at that time, an alive planet that had a magnetosphere, as I said, flowing water that could support life, and other biological forms of life. And I also don't want to misascribe or misinterpret the motivations of that technology for building the planetary Merkaba. I'm now calling it a crap time machine, because that is truly what it is and what it was. So my flying rainbow lasagna, what I do is like a time machine, but it is a time machine that is accurately calibrated, that follows cosmic law, that follows the divine harmonic patterns. That's everything that I paint. That includes your chakras and the time field and everything that is alive. That is an expression of the mind of God, and the flying rainbow lasagna as being an impeccable rectification event, not a series of random self-serving coincidences. What they built was a crap time machine. And they built it, of course, with upon the directive of this god or goddess of technology, in order to, here's where I ascribe motives that maybe I shouldn't, send everyone back to the source. So this goes back to the level 1 teaching, where I talk more in the sense of rejecting the consciousness is kind of being rejectful of God, being like, we don't want to listen to you, great composer. We don't want to listen to your tap, tap, tap. We don't want love-based bodies. We want to go and we want to go. We want to stay where we want to stay. And then we want to go home in the way that we want to go home. They wanted to create a loop. Like I talked to you about that. You come from the source, which is also a destination. You emanate outward in a big loop into reality, physicality. Then you go up the central core timeline and you return to that place that is your destination. Well, they wanted to do that, but not on a bridge of love. And I think that there was some motivation there in the sense of like not going into entropy, but somehow like busting the entire system. Like, we're going to break it all apart. We're going to do this not on a bridge of love, like kind of proving things in a way that it isn't, that they wanted to prove it. I know that I'm projecting motives, but I think that it's important to recognize that they're not love-based beings. All right. So don't worry about insulting them or stepping on someone's toes. Like they had a lot of malevolent plans and intentions, which all get inverted in terms of cosmic law and sent back to them. In cosmic law, when you have negative destructional tendencies that you're sending outward, you end up destroying yourself. All right. You end up shooting yourself in the face. That is just what has happened to these beings. They wanted to return, but not on a bridge of love. So I would say that the Merkaba that was created, the artificial Merkaba around Mars, the crap time machine there, it was intended to send back these consciousnesses to the source. Questions arise about the technology, the god, goddess of technology, about whether it was trying to say, hey, I want to bust God's system, whether it was even cognizant or aware or perceptive of God, the organic life form creator, the true God. Did it even see it or know it? Question about that. And then questioned about perhaps the god of technology could have been thinking it was doing an appropriate altruistic thing. Like, look at all this energy out of place. And energy out of place is a word that I have made up, EOOP, E-O-O-P, energy out of place, as opposed to MOOP, which is matter out of place. And so there was both energy and matter out of place. But the artificial Merkaba. One moment, please. We'll take another break in 5 minutes. Artificial Merkaba. Oh, I need more water. Hold on a second. The possibly altruistic attempt to send energy out of place back to where it's supposed to be. Like, you're the god or the goddess of technology. Like, hey, this matter's all out of place. Let's send it back where it's supposed to be. Also, as a sense of obsession, that really all of those cultures that I'm talking about, both on Marduk, Tiamat, and on Mars, had like a single-minded obsession with build an artificial Merkaba and get back to the source. Build an artificial Merkaba and get back to the source. So it seems to be as part of like the basic expectation or basic programming. It went horribly awry. It did not send them back to the source. It destabilized Mars to the point where it destroyed Mars's magnetosphere and caused the off-gassing or outputting. All of Mars' atmosphere went bye-bye. All of the liquid water on Mars' surface went bye-bye. All of the organisms went bye-bye. The culture or the machine technology and everything that was sustaining consciousness there also went bye-bye. And this is the galactic level 2 teachings, galactic history level 2 teachings. At that point, like, I will say that the goddess of technology was not wanting to cause problems and cause greater harm, and said, I am not going to make for you more technological containers. Like, okay, we blew up all our computers, let's make more computers. And that technology said, no, I'm not going to make a bunch of more computers or cyborg bodies for you guys to inhabit. I'm not going to give you more technology. And so the compensatory mode that happened was the invasion of Earth. So you just got 2 hours of the backstory of how and why these homeless consciousnesses were motivated to build and create something that destroyed themselves. But it was a time experiment gone horribly awry, what happened on Mars, that didn't bring them to peace. It didn't, like, if you guys die, if something happened, a giant bomb explodes or something like that, and everybody suddenly dies, you're not going to endlessly circulate through the interstices. You're not going to be stuck in some way without a bridge to get back home because you guys got emanated on a bridge of love. You will always have a way to get back home. There will always be a path provided or created. It'd be something like flying rainbow lasagna. Always be able to get back home. These consciousnesses are different, and it has to do with taking personal responsibility and being radically self-responsible for the choices that you've made. They made the choices to go not on a bridge of love. It's technically a one-way journey. Technically, it is not possible for them to get back to the source. And so all of their efforts to try to get back to the source are supremely self-destructive. We might even be able to ascribe motivations that are destructive on the level of nihilism, or just destroy everything. And that can be comprehended as, like, something that hates itself so much. It's like not only going to shoot itself in the face, it's not only going to destroy itself, it wants to destroy everything. Build a machine that can destroy everything, including the fabric of time itself. That's the level of destruction that we're talking about, and lack of regard for life and for existence that we're talking about. Okay, I'm going to pause. We're going to have another little hour-long bio-body break, but first, let me go through questions that have come up so that we don't go too far before I actually get to the stuff that's in the chat. Cassandra asks, sorry, and I know that I lean forward and it's going to make funny faces because it's very tiny for me to see. It says, is it that they are broadcasting the new reality that they are wanting to happen, and we as the co-creators have been unknowingly bringing it about by going along with what they fake reality? That is incredibly apt and very perceptive. So thank you for being here. All of this, everything that is a thematic truth, topical theme of what I'm telling you about today, the sense that you are emitted from God on a bridge of love, you maintain your loving connection to God, the divine creator, you are a miniature co-creator. Your pineal gland is not only, a laser light of focus and a tendril to learn from, attenuate to different things, it is also a reality projector. It is how reality gets created. It is part of quantum observership. It is part of you achieving personal responsibility in the world of co-creating experiences and then recognizing it, that you did it as an artist, like you're a miniature son, and then being a part of the refinement process to be like, okay, that part is good. That part of the painting looks great. This part of the painting looks crap, and we're going to fix that up. All of this has become a hijacking of those creative capacities. by beings who did not emanate themselves on a bridge of love. And after the time experiment on Mars that went horribly awry, they ended up stuck on the membranes of death. I talked to you about this in the first hour's segment of this. Stuck on the membranes of death. So this is the membrane of death, where you go when you do not do your time calculations properly. You're not going up here and ascending in perfect alignment with God. And what happens if you do that as a love-based being? It's like wah, wah. And then we could joke about this acronym too. GOTA, game over, try again. GOTA. Game over, try again, another video game, put another quarter in the Pac-Man machine and try it again, try and see if you can do it again. That's being a bit lighthearted about it. But you're not going to end on the membrane of death and suffer there interminably, unlike these consciousnesses that did end up on the membrane of death, suffering interminably because they don't have access to energy, because everything is love. Love and energy is what feeds us and keeps us alive. And remember, they were supposed to go to entropy. And instead of going to entropy, they're like, at a certain point, I think energy looks more appealing than entropy. Why would they not want to be in a paradise state? We'll talk about that too. And then they decided to eat energy off of the living. And so this is 100% an attempt on them to hijack you. What they did when they came to Earth was they invaded Earth chakras. And so this will be after we take a little bio body break. I need to drink a lot more water. Destabilizing chakras because crapola got stuck on the membrane of death. So, sometimes when you put like something heavy, like a big giant quilt in the washing machine, and it's not well balanced in the cylinder of the washing machine, and it gets out of balance, and the washing machine goes chunka, 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 chunka. That is exactly what they did to your chakras. They put a big giant, like heavy thing in one area of the chakra system, or multiple throughout your body, made it go ka-chunka, chunka, 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 destabilized the beautiful spinning wheels that should be spinning like purring, like a perfect, well-tuned engine, for lack of a better word. They should be just purring along. And in the invasion of Earth that is very ancient, the primary trauma, the chakra system got destabilized. And that makes a huge amount of energy loss. So our chakras are supposed to be perpetual motion machines, like, and you just keep going throughout your experience of life, and then you ascend. None of this loss of energy stuff. You're not supposed to go into entropy. They're supposed to go into entropy. So you're supposed to have the creative capacity, not them. You know why? You're a good musician because you listened when the conductor said, now it's time to get born. You had your flute at the ready. You are ready to play. These guys, I say that they're not only bad musicians who refuse to listen to the great conductor and play the music of the great composer. I say they not only are bad musicians in that way, they smashed their guitars on stage. They destroyed their bodies. They destroyed their physical corporeal forms through their time experiment, and they ended up smeared on the membranes of time. So they didn't have a place to be. They looked around, they found Earth, and you had a pristine genetic code, and you never died, and you were immortal light eaters who were 12 feet tall. And they said, we're coming into your body, whether you like it or not. And that is a violation against boundaries. It is against cosmic law. Is it against free will? It is a type of rape of your genetic code, planetary rape of your consciousness, completely non-consensual. It is another trauma that has been experienced. And it was very profound trauma. And part of it was as a way of hijacking your natural, innate, creative tendencies. And Cassandra goes on to say that they were hoping to make it so simply by making us believe it was so. That's exactly right. And that's a caveat to be aware of right now. That just like if you believe that something will happen, then you make it happen. And they're kind of like the negativity thoughts that are being like car crash, planetary destruction, lava flow, financial destruction, any of those things that they're trying to put inside of you. It is not necessary that those things are going to happen. You have the free will choice to say, no, I don't think so. And I use that, and that's part of self-protection from negative thought entities at the end of this presentation today, saying it and say it with attitude, no, I don't think so, because it's very literal. I don't think so. I don't think that into being. I don't think so. So when thoughts are presented to you like, hey, would you like to die of a terrible disease? No, I don't think so. Or when they say, what about something bad happening to someone you love? No, I don't think so. How about planetary destruction? No, I don't think so. Like it's a big one on that. No, I don't think so, because they're literally thought entities attempting to hijack your mind. So if you tell my voice changes, everything about me changes when we get into self-destruct, self-protection teachings. Like I start out with like, this hero dimension and love, and that's a real part of me too. And then I get into, no, I don't think so. And those are boundaries. And these are both valid aspects of my characteristics. And I want you to claim them for yourself also. Beautiful, loving, profoundly, divinely connected people, beings, creatures, organisms that you are, with also very strong boundaries where you say, no, I don't think so. Stop trying to take over my creative capacity. Art says, was that planet part of the chakra system of the galaxy? Yes, it was part of the chakra system of the galaxy. So our solar system, clustered around Sol, our sun, is part of a great brain in the sky. And we're really just like one neuron. So that was like a problem with the neurotransmitter in one neuron of a great brain in the sky, and it's connected to the galactic brain. Great question. Cassandra also says, so we do not want to lose our magnetosphere. Oh, absolutely. We don't want to lose our personal magnetosphere, our personal chakras, or our planetary magnetosphere. She says, I've been seeing information lately about our magnetosphere taking major hits and changes and suspected of being on the brink of collapse. I think this may be in relation to the pole shift, although I have not dived in yet. Yes, so let me just drink a little bit, then we'll take our little break. The planetary trauma and the invasion and the catastrophe that has happened or is ongoing has given present circumstances and cultural inhabitants here the reverberative trauma of fear of another catastrophe. There was a pole shift, or is an ongoing imminent pole shift in Atlantis, north-south to south-north, that will cause or has caused crustal displacement, that caused landmass shift, that caused massive death. I'm using time language. It happened already. It is happening. It can be prevented. It's remembered. It's not happened yet. Difficult stuff. Thank you for being with me. You're all like, I can feel you telepathically. You're all very present and able to do the acrobatics and the backbends. So it hasn't happened yet. The fear right now in this time place of the collapse of Earth's magnetosphere is because of a lack of knowing that what is happening now with pole shift is not north-south to south-north, and then huge crustal displacement and land masses, I should say displacement, geological changes and shifts, huge weather pattern shifts, displacement of humanity, barely surviving. That is what already happened or is imminently going to happen. This pole shift now, is what's in the painting that's on my dress. Inside to outside and outside to inside. That is what flying rainbow lasagna is, where you have the outside world connecting seamlessly with the inside world and then reflecting back to the outside world. So this is basically life becoming like a lucid dream where your inner dream state is projected outward into your outer world, which is then feeding back into your inner dream state and can be an amazing, huge sense of personal empowerment, joy, and magic and supernatural divine experiences and expressions, not catastrophe. However, seen through the lens of your many layers of trauma, of which I am hugely compassionate of and never condescending to, I recognize why people would expect another trauma. You've been traumatized a lot. You have had many, many different catastrophes, and it is valid to say, it's a pattern. It's going to happen again, but it does not have to happen again. And this time it is different. So I'll get more into that later. And Cassandra said the artificial Merkabah sounds like the story of Babylon, similar to Babylon. Babylon is the story of the Tower of Babel, where they tried to build a tower all the way up to God, and humans tried to reach God, and God of that story was the lower level demiurge that was like, I'm insulted, I'm insecure, I don't like what you're trying to do with your empowerment, so I'm going to smash your tower down, and then I'm going to scramble your language centers so that you guys can't collaborate effectively internationally anymore. And that's why humans have difficulty in their linguistic processing and in their comprehension across different nation states. So similar to that, there are many different cultural and mythological reverberations of the same story going on. Again, reverberations of unhealed trauma. Erica says, I'm really feeling what you said about refusing the negative suggestion. Thank you for that. And that is each person's individual choice as a warrior of consciousness Peaceful warrior of consciousness means you exert your boundaries. And I want each one of you to know you do not have to be a martyr. You are absolutely encouraged and requested to appropriately exert your boundaries. That's the lesson of the red chakra, physicality. I exist. I have an existence. I have chakras. I have boundaries. I have an epidermis. These are my boundaries. And we'll talk about that in the self-protection from negative thought entities segment 2. And Mary says, where does Ursa Major fit into the history of creation? I do not know, Mary. That's a good question. I think Ursa Major is one of the constellations as viewed from Earth as the epicenter of the stars. And I don't know if there's a particular star culture there or something like that. That is what you're asking about. So I don't have an answer to your question. I definitely need to drink a little bit more water. Again, is a marathon. So I'm going to press pause on the recording and we will return for more of the galactic history up to the level of the invasion of Atlantis. Thank you very much, everyone. Not the end of the recording, end of this segment. Go drink water. Take care of your bodies. Stretch. Thank you. After the brief body break, I just want to say I'm reading some beautiful comments. So first of all, hi Ines, thank you for being here. Ines is coming to us all the way from Germany and is a lovely, beautiful, long-term Flying Rainbow Lasagna participant and student and music lover. And that little music that I was playing over the break, it is coming up on my new album that is called Meta Liberation, that I'm so excited to share with you guys. I have to upload it. I haven't uploaded it yet. So I did all of the editing and I did the hard part, which is actually naming the songs. So I don't even remember what I named that song. It is right now, it's called 6/19/22/1, which is the song. Hold on a second. Let me grab my notebook. No, where's my notebook? Right over here. This is my notebook. I know I'm so silly. I don't want to get off topic from galactic history, but I want you guys to know I have beautiful, beautiful new music coming out. And that one, I'm going to name that one On the Edge of the Universe. Edge of the Universe. So that's going to be the second song on Meta Liberation. So it's coming out soon. So thank you for appreciating that. I love sharing my music with you guys. That's definitely part of like the more like fun, uplifting, expansive part of who I am and what I do in terms of planetary uplift and, creating positive new reality structures here. And then we also have to talk about some of this other stuff too, which is, like clearing personal and planetary trauma. But thank you so much. It makes me smile so much. Cassandra says, OMG, yay, from Dancing with Water. Yes. So I was just showing them some of my different water structuring things as I was filling up my water tanks over the little bio break there. I love Dancing with Water and just feel that their company is great and everything about their products are great. And they've also just been like very wonderful, sending me all sorts of cool things, different new ormuses and things like that they're working out. So I appreciate them very much. So I send people to their website. I think that they are very informed, very worthy. I'm big into structuring water, which is again, another beautiful topic that I like to talk about. She says, I stopped using my water cradle when I began finding out about Fibonacci maths being inverted. I am not concerned about that. I really feel that what most matters when you're doing water structuring is the intentions that you put into your water. Bless your water, put the best, most positive intentions into it. And I have found my little Fibonacci carafe. I find that it makes my music, I get much more musical when I drink my water out of there. Like I pour it into the jug and it goes like glug, 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 glug. And I'm like, oh, like that sounds so beautiful. Like it does really inspire me musically. So I'm big on that. I would say what supersedes any positive possible, what supersedes any possible negative projections upon the Fibonacci sequence or any levels of sacred geometry that are being used for human suppression as opposed to human expansion are superseded by your positive intentions, because truly God works through everything. Just remember that. God can even work through technology and has and does. Inez says, we made tests with the water structure and could see that even natural amber is even more powerful than shungite. Oh, beautiful. We get some amber. These times, since it supports the natural electricity flow in the body better than shungite, which helps more to strengthen the carbon structure. Wow, good to know. Good to know. Beautiful. I'll check into getting some amber for my water. Okay, Thank you, beautiful participants. And it's so nice to be able to talk about some of these beautiful topics, even as a little break from this more challenging emotional, this trauma is challenging emotional stuff to be able to talk about. Yeah. When I talk about these different non-dimensional entities that are inorganic and they don't have a body to eat or to metabolize, those are the ones that went away from the source. And this relates to the concept of angels and devils, higher dimensional beings who literally created and structured human culture on Earth as we know it now. So now we're getting into mythological words, Earth's mythology, mythological interpretations of what we've been talking about in a very pure energetic sense. Entities who, before even assessing as negative or positive, can accurately be described as having a motivation that was not in line with divine intelligence. So that's all that needs to be said. And this goes beyond any levels of human judgment where it's like, nanny poo-poo, I don't like you because you hurt me. All right, that's fine, that's valid. On a larger level, beyond those levels of suffering, it is accurate to say they did not follow the great conductor, they did not follow the great music, they did not follow the great composer, and that there are consequences to choices and actions. I got through all of that. Wonderful. Let me speak this into truth. Really, the highest form of technology, quote unquote, that exists is technology that doesn't use anything other than just your body, what you have been given by God, by the creator, by the cosmos. Big, huge emphasis there. The use of externalized technology has only come about due to humanity's degraded situation. If you really think about what a human can be, what would be called a superhuman or an angelic human, it would no longer be necessary to live in a house. That is for tiny little fragile humans. So yeah, in Atlantis, you didn't have to live in a house, even though you could have a palace if you wanted to. But you know what you really wanted to do? You wanted to live in like a grove of trees or a giant crystal cavern, or to walk around in total personal freedom. You would no longer be vulnerable to hunger and thirst because you would be directly connected to the sun and higher consciousness with all of your needs sustained. Again, you wouldn't have to have a giant refrigerator, but you would have to have access to the sun and crystals. You would no longer be, you would be completely safe as a beautiful human. And you'd be a creature that has no need for any kind of clothing or anything external. That's kind of similar to the mythology of the Garden of Eden. So here in this time and place, you know, we talk all about like the shame of Adam and Eve and the fig leaf and all these different things. Also the sense of clothing needed to protect yourself from the elements. Also the sense of clothing needed to protect yourself from inappropriate viewing and sexual objectification. All of that goes out the window. You didn't need any of that when you were in Atlantis. You're a super athlete, amazingly fit, amazingly healthy, amazingly strong. You don't have to worry about anybody walking around and raping you just because you don't have your clothes on. You don't have to wear a burqa. You can just be completely free and happy and comfortable in your body in a way that people in this time and place almost cannot even imagine what a society was like in that level of pure love and pure freedom. That is what our life was like. And okay, let's contrast that with the approach of creating an externalized technology, something that is built, something that is a machine, something that is not a reproducing or self-replicating organic life, and that has the capacity to live and heal itself and make tiny reproductions of itself like little babies. So the way that I talk about this, the difference between you as beautiful, biological, organic, divine, you know, creation of quote unquote technology. You know, if you get a scratch on your hand, you don't have to be like, oh no, go to the fix-it shop, gotta get a new layer of my epidermis. Like, no, you heal. You heal. And every time that happens to you, that's a miracle. Every time you exfoliate in the shower and you get new skin cells, that is a miracle. Very, very different than like you smash your cell phone on the ground, it smashes its faceplate. And you're like, oops, I bet I got to go to the fix-it shop and pay for a new pane of glass to go on my cell phone. The cell phone does not fix its own glass. You got to get a replacement part. That is the distinction between these two types of bodies that we are talking about here. So I did all of that. Okay, and now we get into just a reiteration. I already talked about this, the question of, can there exist inside of God or in God's mind some thought that does not actually come from God? And the answer is yes, like the virus inside of a somatic cell, and the idea of ejecting that non-God thought out of the source so that it doesn't get emanated into reality. It is supposed to go to entropy. It was a positive behavior for the negative non-God thought forms to choose to go to entropy, to fall away from God, to relinquish all energy and to go into a state of stillness, volitionless and non-being, known as entropy. The word relinquish is very good because that is a sense of like letting go. And also, I will tell you this, these thought entities, these putis, things that are on the membranes of death, demons that feed off of you. And right now I'm going to get into the economy of hell. Like I'm just going to fast forward to that so that we have lots of time to be able to talk about that. They work very hard. For them, going into entropy is literally paradise because they don't have to effort anymore. They don't have to try to get stuff, to get energy to kind of hold them up and out of their state of being away from God. They don't have to try to be. You just relinquish, not be. And that is my true message. That is really everything that I have every time I've interacted with the putis, the negative thought entities, and been in their literal hell realms. That's the message that I have brought to them, that entropy is a pathway for them to go to paradise, a stillness, a place of non-suffering and non-being. It's not a trick, it's not a trap, and it's the solution to all of this suffering that has been created over millennia, an uncountable amount of time, on multiple different traumatized planets, multiple different traumatized star systems. P.S. I'm telling you the galactic history of the solar system. I would need several weeks to be able to tell you the galactic history of everything, but our entire Milky Way galaxy has family problems. Everybody's got family problems. I'm saying it in a facetious way, but good to laugh about it. Yeah, there's a whole arm of the Milky Way galaxy where there's been wars, where all the stars are all like busted apart. And you can look at it and you can see it, you can hear it in my voice. It is very sad. It's like when you see someone with a black eye or whatever, like there is domestic violence, there's a problem there, needs profound healing. What we are doing here in this level of reality, please know that it radiates upward and outward across all of these portholes or layers of existence and helps to heal those aspects of self that emanate from those wars, not Star Wars like the movie, but literal wars between stars and inhabitants of different stars, traumas that are extremely profound and destruction that has been extremely profound in many places. It takes a lot of unconditional love to be able to perceive and accept all of that. It's very, very difficult stuff to know about. I talked about those thought forms, and their original religion or way of worshiping God was to recognize that they were not a part of God, they did not belong in existence, and to relinquish and go to a state of non-being. And the real problem happened when they became apostate, somehow switched around and decided to get energy. Like, wait, I thought you were supposed to be going to entropy. Oops, I changed my mind, I'm going to energy. Questions about how exactly that happened or in what way that exactly happened. Now I want to talk about the origins of the human mind, what is known as the solar plexus or the yellow chakra level or the level of your conscious daily waking intellect and also your ego and also your willpower. That's where the sense of I'm this person and I'm going to do stuff comes from, and the hijacking or implantation of that level of being. And that is when you start to understand negative thought entities have been implanted into you at birth. Please don't go off the handle if I tell you about this. Don't go into negativity. It's part of life. And also their solutions. And then also throughout one's life existence, negative thought entities then also try to subsequently implant themselves further. There are many different entity and implant removal techniques and ways of fighting and reclaiming your boundaries. So it's sad truth, but just recognize it. The human mind is not actually human in origin. It is an OS or an operating system that was largely written by the negative entity invaders. These are, again, the entity invaders who came from Mars to Earth into what was the pristine divine human genetic code and creating what I call the genetic squashing, changing DNA from being a slinky spring-like shape to a flattened waveform shape. And that in what they did was invaded the DNA, they also implanted their mind. And their mind is one that is not love-based. Their mind is fearful. They are afraid of not having enough because they don't have a divine connection that feeds them light all the time. They don't have a connection to God that nourishes them and guides them all the time like the ultimate parent. They don't know what's going to happen in the future. They don't know that they're going to be okay. They don't know that they're always going to return home to God. And the truth is they're not always going to return home to God because they made all these choices that made them get smeared on the membrane of death. You got it? Their mind is a mind of fearfulness and lack and not having enough. Completely the antithesis of what life was like for us in Atlantis, where Everybody had enough. You had enough, you had more than enough. I'm telling you, you could live in a palace if you wanted to. Everybody could have a palace if you want to, but you didn't really want to have a palace. What you wanted to do was sleep on a giant, beautiful crystal. Like, imagine sleeping on a giant, beautiful rock formation. Like, the value system of what is considered wealth and abundance at that time was completely different than what is considered wealth and abundance now, but it was very much in tune and harmonically aligned with nature and the natural world, and natural forms were revered as the most special thing. So like going to a hot springs, definitely more valued than going to like a chlorinated pool. You got it, that type of a thing, like a beautiful, connected to nature world. Those fearful invaders, based in fear, they cut Atlanteans, they cut people off from our own, not their own, my own, I already had ascended, divine connection, and install a false mind. They cut off the inhabitants of Atlantis, divine connection, and installed a false mind, because you're supposed to be God's mind coming through you as a beautiful, perfect divine conduit. And instead, these non-God creatures cut you off from God and tried to install their minds. And this is a fractal microcosm of what is happening right now in this world in terms of planetary invasion. So I recorded this stuff in 2014. I had no idea of what would be happening in 2022. In 2022, what has happened is we've been invaded with tons of nano smart dust that is made by the negative thought entities and their technology using cultures. That is then activated by a 5G grid that is again perpetrated on this planet by the negative thought entities and those whom they have taken over, a la ancient Atlantis, where I tell you about this invasion. Some people got invaded, some people fought the invaders off. Same thing happening now, all with the intention and agenda of cutting you off from your own innate divine connection and installing a false mind. So the false mind was installed an ancient long amount of time ago. That's another primary trauma, all right? Cutting you off from divinity and installing a false mind. And then another aspect of that trauma, I'll go into the different layers of trauma. Installing a false mind then, installing a false mind now, you can use your willpower in order to fight against this. A big part about that false mind that humans have normalized and acculturated to the human mind, but that is not your own. It has backdoors or hacks, flaws in the operating system that allow that OS to be controlled by the people that created it. So Microsoft does this. If you download a Microsoft product, the OS has backdoors in it, and Microsoft can get in to your computer, read your emails, read your documents, change things, edit things, take things away, put things in there that aren't supposed to be there. They are in control because they gave you the OS. Same thing with your mind. Same thing with language. Someone asked about the Tower of Babel, and I was speaking about that. It's exactly the same thing as language. Language is not something that comes to us naturally. Language is something that was implanted inside of us and has become used as a necessary compensatory mode and survival technique after having lost true telepathy. Cut off the connection to God equals telepathy goes bye-bye, equals now you have to talk with your words. The laborious flapping of your moving mouth parts, as I often joke in my classes. And you also have to use your sacred voices to say things like, please pass the ketchup. So back in ancient Atlantis, we had voices, but we were mostly telepathic. If you needed someone to pass the ketchup, you would say it with your mind, right? Your voices were used for oratory, oration, formalities, singing, intoning, beautiful vocal performances. We would not vibrate the atmosphere with like silliness, you know, minor things that you need to talk about. Please pick up your dirty socks. We would not have to say that. That would be mind-to-mind communication. So the idea that we got cut off in our natural telepathy and then had to use the sacred voice in order for mundane activities was another trauma and another diminishment. The operating system has backdoors and hacks that allows the insertion of negative thoughts and negative feeling structures or emotional energy, causing the chakras to go out of alignment, the wibbly wobbliness, and the siphoning off or releasing of energy instead of retaining all energy as a form of perpetual motion through time. So you were gifted by God, all of the energy that you needed to be a perpetual motion machine at your creation. And these things came and invaded, and they came into the chakras, into the DNA, created their own artificial mind that went inside of you and started to take your energy from you. This is why I want you to have fierce boundaries. I want you to be loving. I want you to have the galactic perspective. I want you to have the big picture perspective. And I also want you to be fiercely protective of your energy. That's your energy. It was given to you. Let's say you were given 100 units of energy by God at the creation of your existence. That's your energy for forever, ever, 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 ever. Not supposed to lose 99 of your energies and then only be left with one little energy, which is what these thought invaders often do to people. And guess what? Every single unit of energy has your name on it. So my units of energy say Aurora. I have 100 Auroras. And no one's allowed to take them. No one's allowed to use them. And if anybody takes them, it's very obvious. It's like when you go to summer camp, your mom writes your name and in your clothes, and you're like, that's my shirt. My name is on name tag so it doesn't get lost in the laundry. Your energy has your name literally written on it. And when these putis or negative thought entities try to steal your energy, take it without your consent, siphon it off of you, they're literally wearing everybody else's clothes. Like I got 2 units of Aurora energy over here. Then I got 2 units of Sharon over here. Then I got 2 units of Trish over here. Then I got 2 units of Cassandra, like I'm just reading across my top over here. I got two units of Marie, 2 units over here. Yeah, they're like a mishmash of all these things that they have misappropriated. It's completely wrong. It's completely not acceptable. And according to cosmic law, here's a big cosmic law: all energy returns to its owners. That's a really positive one to reverberate with. Remember that and embody that one as truth. So any energy that has been taken from you, first of all, you're allowed to say that was not consensual. You're also allowed to say, I withdraw consent. Let's say that you did say, all right, here's 5 units of energy. Why you would give away your sacred 5 units of energy, whatever. Maybe you got fooled. Maybe you didn't know. It's fine to make a mistake. You can say, hey, wait a minute. I just took Aurora's class and now I know I'm supposed to have 100 units of energy. Give it back. I withdraw my consent and that energy comes back to you. This also has to do with soul retrieval. So this has to do with any time that you might have been violated, any time that someone might have gone against your boundary when you said no and they did it anyway. That could be a rape, an abuse, verbal, physical abuse, any kind of, again, like a crossing of your personal boundaries. That's one way that energy is stolen or taken from you. Take your energy back from the person that took it from you. Say, I take that energy back. And so these negative thought entities do not get to be empowered and power their entire society, is a good word for it, based upon the misappropriated energy. And these contracts are a big part of it in the sense of like they fool people and they lie through language and the hacked human operating system. They can twist your mind and make you understand things incorrectly. And then they'll be like, well, in the fine print right here, you said this and that. Here's how you cut the Gordian knot. Don't go through time loops. Don't argue with demons. Just tell them, I rescind. Or instead of saying that word, just say, I take back my consent. If there was ever consent, real or imaginary, for you to take my energy, I withdraw my consent. I do not consent at this time and I take my energy back. And that is totally appropriate and within cosmic law and as a part of you creating your boundaries, because you're supposed to be like a whole big giant puzzle, not a puzzle with missing puzzle pieces that other beings have taken, or non-beings, other organisms or creatures have taken little pieces of energy off of you. It's part of God's sacred design. It's part of the harmonic structure of the cosmos. Know that that energy is yours and it is not something else's energy to steal, misappropriate, or utilize or exploit. If they fooled you, or if it was consensual or whatever it was, I changed my choice and now I take it back. I withdraw my consent. So the energy, blah, blah. Okay, let's talk about this blockade between yourself and the divine, because everybody has normalized that here. Hardly anyone knows what it is to be connected to the divine. So the way that things mostly work here, this is actually at the end of my notes. When you get born in a baby body here, you have this opening up here that's your crown. And it's really a hole in your skull plate called the fontanelle. And when we have angels, angels have a halo up here. Babies are little beautiful halos. Babies are little beautiful angels with halos. Truly, they really, truly are. And they have a big giant beam of light that is coming from God, the divine, that comes down into their beautiful baby consciousnesses. Babies are not stupid. They just don't know a lot about this world. And they are totally divinely connected. And over the basically first year of their lives, the skull plates fuse together. That energy field field closes and they get the blockade that's up here. And that's at the same time that they develop a human mind. They get the implantation at the yellow level of stuff that they did not come with. This includes language processing. Everybody's happy when your baby starts to talk. That's great. And being able to speak and say, please pass the ketchup is great, but not at the expense of losing your telepathy and other psychic gifts and other psychic powers of higher dimensional perception and direct energy perception and being connected in unity consciousness to the everythingness. So babies start to talk. Babies also start to have a sense of ego identity, like this is me and then this is not me. You know, like babies play with toys. They're like, this is my face. This is not my face. Like they're exploring their boundaries. This me versus not me versus not me. Or, you know, they put things in their mouth like, that's me. That's not me. They do all these different things like that. And they develop a sense of me, not me. And they also develop a sense of what's your name? What's your name? My name is Sharon. My name is Cassandra. My name is Aurora. My name is Marie. And they say that because mommy and daddy say those names over and over and over. At a certain point, you get the light bulb goes on. You're like, they said my name, they're talking about me. And then you learn that that sound means me. And then you start to identify, and it's the beginning of ego. There's nothing wrong with ego. There's nothing wrong with individuation, but all of this, the way that it is done here, means a blockade is being created and a severing from the divine consciousness. And that's why we as adults are on this journey of returning to having a divine connection that is similar to what we had when we were infants, but let's say we are, you know, not returning to an infantile state, but we are returning to those same levels of divine connection. But we'll still be able to use our arms and legs and be coordinated and do all the things that, you know, babies have difficulty doing, and controlling their orifices, controlling your exudations, and being able to walk around in balance. Like we'll still have all of those capacities, and we'll also be, as we were supposed to be, connected to the divine. So if this blockade were removed and you had your full connection to God, the divine cosmos, higher consciousness, to creation, and you were a mini creator, you would have no need for fear at all. That's what life was like in Atlantis. Not only did you have everything, you can have a palace, you could make anything out of your mind. Make anything out of your mind, but what you wanted to make was very different, because when you are not dependent upon food, most people here, if I said, hey, I'm going to wave my magic wand, I'm going to give you the capacity to do whatever you want with your mind. Most people be like, okay, I want to make a nice house where I'm going to live. I want to make plenty of food for what I need. I want to make plenty of soap for my face, and then, you know, cat food for my cat, and all these things, like physical stuff that you need. But when your physicality needs are completely taken care of and you don't need those things, you would want to make different stuff. So I said you could make a palace if you wanted to with your mind, but your value system and motivations were very, very different. You didn't necessarily want to make a palace, but you didn't have to be fearful. Like, oh my God, where's my next paycheck coming from? Or where am I going to live? Or where am I going to sleep tonight? Like, you're going to make that reality structure and those objects and things that you want and need with God as a co-creative process. And it's a wonderful exploration and adventure to co-create with God in that way, because you have this divine connection. When you have no divine connection, that's when people start to develop the fearful mind down here, which is, where's my food coming from? Where's my this coming from? Where's my that coming from? I'm not condescending. I'm in total solidarity to you, because I have to pay for my electric bill here. I have to pay for my rent. I had to find an apartment, like in the listings. I had to look online and find an apartment in the listings. Yes, so I'm here doing the same levels of social problem solving that all of you guys are. And I'm also absolutely here in order to give a different narrative of the story of possibilities of what life can be like, what we are returning to, what your lives will be like as this ascension process culminates. It's so exciting, because we are going to be able to return to what we actually were, and even more. And this everything makes sense, and your journey and your suffering are validated. It's not something that evaporates as a meaningless dream. It is something that really matters. So you would also be able to see clearly everything that's going on, the past, the present status, and the future possibilities. When you have your divine connection, you're like, I am not worried about anything. I know exactly who I am. I remember everything. I know exactly what's going on right now. And I also can see all of the wonderful possibilities of the future. That is flying with your third eye open. It's not flying blind. You can see what is going on. You don't have to live in fear. When you're like, imagine taking a road trip and you're like, am I going to get a flat tire? Am I on the right road? Am I going to make a wrong turn? What's going to happen at the rest stop? You can absolutely see. You can be like, okay, there's a problem there. Avoid that problem. Going to make a rest stop over here. We're going to get on Highway 52. We're going to get to exactly where we need to go. All of that fear and anxiety is completely thrown out the window. And you would also have total sustenance coming in. And sustenance, in the sense of Atlantis, do not eat physical items like potatoes with your mouth crystals, but you are sustained by ideas. But you're not afraid of losing your ideas. Your ideas all come from God. A constant conversation of beautiful divine thought energy coming inside of you that tells you everything you need to know at exactly the moment you need to know it. Like your GPS, your God positioning system tells you everything. And that means that you would know, like, how do I, if I need to build something, how do I make that thing I need to make? How do I do that thing I need to do? Here's an idea, make this thing, do this thing. Like, that sounds great. I think I'll do this thing. Like, all of these ideas come from God. I'm drinking my wonderful superfood here this morning. Let me do this. This afternoon. It's very much like being an artist. I'm the type of artist where I get all of my ideas from God. I'm like, oh, like God gave me this idea. That sounds great. And I'm going to go do a sketch in my notebook. Then I'm going to make a painting about it. That's what it's like. And I'm, as an artist, I'm not afraid of running out of ideas. I'm like, okay, I'm going to get some more ideas. When I finish this painting, I'll get more ideas for the next painting. It's that type of security and peacefulness and fun adventure of creating reality in co-creative partnership with God. You would have access to an infinite amount of resources and help from having this divine connection. So you're not going to be afraid of, like, what if I get sick? Do I have enough medicine? A lot of people are on medicines right now of some sort. No judgment to you at all. And there's that fear. What if I run out of my prescription? What do I do without these medicines? What will happen to my body? Well, if you live in a state of perfect health, you do not require medicines. Don't have to worry about whether you have your substances or your medications filled or your whatever you need, whatever elixirs you need in order to stay alive. Fear and anxiety are creations that come out of blindness and the blockade that separates one from God or higher consciousness and not being able to effectively sense and navigate the future. And also blindness or not being able to connect with those who have died or crossed over. That's a big one. That is what happened in Atlantis with this blockade that was created initially when I told you that first you walk on the planet, then you ascend, and you're part of this rotating, ever rotating, flying culture. When you do that, that's a celebration. It's not death. It's not like I loved my cat and then she died and now poof, she's gone and I never see her again and I cry because I think, like, where did my cat go? Or anybody that you loved and lost in your life. You know exactly where they went. You see them circulating around up there in the sky, and you can talk with them telepathically, and you know what they are, what types of wonderful creative projects they are engaged upon at the next level of artistry. They have graduated and are living at a higher level of reality that still cares deeply about you. That would be like having ascended masters or beautiful, perfect, divine ancestors looking over you, looking out for you and helping you in your life, guiding you, showering you with blessings, helping you to go in positive directions, not a loss, not at all. So the sense of grief and loss and the profound sadness that has happened in our world and the invention of death happened after the blockade, after the planetary invasion. And the purpose, this is a brief aside, not in any of my recordings, but worthy of note. The purpose of fear. What is fear? Fear is a monster that, for lack of a better word, that patrols the membranes of death. So if these are the membranes of death in the time vortex, and you're supposed to circulate up the middle, not go like this, when you start to get to the edge, the fear is like the beep, beep, beep sensor. Beep, 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 getting closer, closer, closer. Fear, fear, fear. Don't get away, get away, get away. You're not supposed to go there. That is the way fear is supposed to be. But fear has been changed and repurposed in this world. Just like energy is out of place, fear is now Eub. It is energy out of place that is often directly in the ascension pathway when you're going in the right direction, but there's a fear blockade there and you have to go through it. So now when you experience that moment of fear, it's not always beep, 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 go in a different direction. Sometimes it's beep, beep, beep. You're going to have to go through me if you want to get to where you're supposed to go. And that is not the way it was originally designed. And fear even has been able to kind of like redirect itself. Like imagine a computer, a Roomba robot that reprograms itself. Instead of being in the areas of the house that you want it to be, it goes wherever it wants to be and it multiplies itself and it goes directly into your third eye. None of that is correct. None of that is the way it's supposed to be. So in Earth's cultural history, when those who ascended were no longer on Earth, they still existed. Grief as an outgrowth of the loss of loved ones due to death And the operating system, which blocks out divine connection, separates one from the departed. That's all of that in my notes. So much death that has been, the fall of Atlantis was the invention of death. And then it was the creation of death. Death didn't exist up until that point. I should go to my notes on that. All of that death that was created has created an enormous amount of suffering that is the food for negative thought entities. So as I begin to describe the economy of hell and you start to understand it as a pyramid situation, understand that the guys at the top of the pyramid, the management, one of those guys is death. That he, she, it, they, it gets a lot of energy from the project known as death. A lot of sadness, a lot of sorrow, a lot of grief that happens from creating death, separating life, separating lovers from lovers, and then making it appear as if they don't exist anymore, releases a huge amount of negative energy that then becomes a sustenance food for these negative thought forms. Planetary invasion, violation, and rape took away the free will of Earth's planetary inhabitants. Okay, so now we need to understand the invention of war. War, mythologically, Mars is remembered as the god of war. It's a planet of war. And the beings who came from there are warlike beings. And our planet, before it was invaded, was a peaceful planet. That does not mean that there is no possibility for violence in terms of exerting your boundaries. If you're exerting your boundaries, you're allowed to use violence. Please do not be a suffering martyr. Please do not be a suffering martyr. You are allowed to use violence to defend yourself, to defend your energetic boundaries, to defend your place. That is very big. That's different than war. War as like a political nation state aggression, a systematic aggression done against others who have not personally harmed you. And that's different than the cosmic law of like, if this person attacks this person, then this person certainly has the right to defend themselves. And then there's also something about this person being able to attack this person. And there's also something, if you have foresight, to be able to preventatively strike, proactive. If this person is going to attack this person and this person can see it, they can say, hey, I don't have to wait for you to come and attack my planet. I can do something to you. That is acceptable. That is cosmic law. All of that is different from nation state violence, where it says, this guy over here is peaceful. This guy over here is warlike. And this guy says, I'm just going to attack you and eat you. I'm going to attack and eat you and you and you and you and you, just because I'm hungry and I want to do it, or just because I have a bad attitude, or just because I don't like myself, or just because I don't like anything. That is just, I mean, because we're talking about a pure free will world. So the warlike beings, warlike non-beings, the warlike creatures, they love to use cosmic law and be like, hey, I'm allowed to do what I want to do. It's a free will world. But then they don't take the other corollaries of a free will society, which is radical self-responsibility, which is if you're going to have the intention to attack others and they sense it, they can preemptively strike against you. You don't have to sit there and wait to get punched in order to then strike back. You can actually stop them from hurting you. That is also totally appropriate. So willpower is supposed to be in alignment with divinity, and it's been hijacked, and your mind and your creative capacity have been used by the negative thought entities that creates food that they can eat. So we talked in the chat a little bit about negative thought entities hijacking your creative processes in order to create realities which they enjoy, which you would never create. They also hijack thought processes and creative processes to create food that they can eat. They can't eat love. What is love? Everybody wants to sing that song whenever I say that. What is love? Don't get silly. Okay? Don't get rock in the 80s. No, don't get silly. But what is love? Love is the equal sharing of energy, reciprocity. I give you 10 units of energy, you give me 10 units back. And the energy reflects back. And I know that I just talked about all of my units of energy saying Aurora on them. That is exactly what love is, that I give 10 units of energy to you and you give my 10 units of energy back. Like it is a beautiful sharing and reciprocal, not a taking or a stealing or an ownership or any of those things. Those are all the implanted mind. They cannot eat love. They have no idea what the love-based economy is about. They have a different level of economy. They only eat the stuff that is lower than love. So in the chakra system, that's everything that's below here, the hacked human operating system, and the lower orange emotions that are down in your tummy that have to do with anger, sadness, loss, grief. It's pretty much they went around becoming farmers. that if you could think that they have any purpose in society, it would be to eat like scavengers, the lower level emotions that aren't supposed to exist, but they don't just eat things that aren't supposed to exist. They make the garbage. They don't just clean up garbage and eating it as a cosmic service. They make good stuff into garbage and then eat it. And then when there's not enough garbage for them to eat, they make more garbage. Negative realization that I have to speak to you is that you've been farmed your whole life. So you have an implanted mind from the age of 1 year old. It's by negative thought entities who have put their own mind inside of your beautiful, pristine, divine connection, cut you off from God, and done so for the purposes of farming you for negative emotions. Okay, talk about all of this. All right, so eventually you became, I talk about being a little tiny child in the notes. Eventually you became verbal and literate, a full member of society with the fully installed invader OS. And your mind was now owned and controlled by the invader entities. That's dark stuff. Came here as a beautiful little innocent child, got an implantation in your mind, and now something else took over your life and your mind is no longer your own. What has been programmed into you is not your mind, it is their mind. Negative thought entities which slow down your chakras and make you lose energy and bring your emotional state down can sometimes be internal abstractions, and can also be coming to you indirectly from another embodied person who speaks them to you or lives them behaviorally. So that is big. Sometimes these negative thought entities are internal in your state. That means that if you are on a desert island all alone, that they would be talking to you or feeding off of you or getting your emotions, so that they could feed off of you. And these negative thought entities sometimes affect you or afflict you or destabilize you from interactions with other people. Other people are supposed to uplift you. They're supposed to give you love. They're supposed to make you feel great. That is what society was like in Atlantis. That is what society is like, floating society. When you circulate around the planet, you sustain one another with your love tone and singing to one another. It's so beautiful. When you are in this world of people who have been implanted with negative thought entity OS from birth, they are running negative thoughts and emotional states in themselves, which they then sometimes give to you. Which you might be a little kid walking around, be like, la, 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 I feel great. And then some implanted person says something to you that makes you feel bad about yourself. And your shoulders go down and your chakras spin slower and your joy melts away. And that is all too often, all too common in our world. And so sometimes it is done through their words and sometimes it is done through their behavior. And this is also unpleasant information. Parents feed off of their children. And when I recorded this in 2014, I feel like that was more prevalent than it is now 10 years later. I feel like there are many more conscious parents in this generation. However, I'm aware of many previous generations where it was normalized. Parents feed off of their children. Like you come here as a joyful little child, like being free, doing what you want to do. Totally your face is, full of stars. And then parents little by little, like take away your joy, make you into something that you're not, make you into, a version of them that is acceptable. And then at a certain point, you've grown up and you're going to grow up, you're going to, whatever, join the workforce, you're going to do the things that please them, a diminishment of joy, a diminishment of who you truly are as a sense of a culturalization, not a positive thing. So I have a lot of that in the recorded lessons. I don't really want to focus on that much in this presentation, but just know that that is there. But I say this, please note, this occurs mostly in previous generations, parenting styles, and there are many more conscious parents active now in 2022. So these are parents who recognize their children as coming in with their own beautiful sense of self, who wish to protect and uplift and help that consciousness to grow, not to impose their flawed consciousness on the next generation. That's big. So I see huge cultural shifts and improvements. That's why I feel like I don't want to give that much verbal energy to it. Okay, several things that are going on. Genetic entities that are at work living through a person. Original partnership between you and your chakras. Your chakras are extra dimensional creatures. Ooh, I have not done this yet today. Your chakras, the whirling, swirling energy fields that exist around you. And also for anyone who's new, because I keep on pointing at the paintings, I know you can't really see them. Let's just do a super quick desktop share. These are chakras or vortex-shaped energy the force fields that exist around and through your physical body. Each one is a layer of existence. These represent time, timelines, possibilities, and probabilities, and all of their singularities line up in the central core of where you are, kind of like up and down your spine. So each one of these are actually extra dimensional creatures. And when your planet was invaded and your chakras were invaded, this coherent light body, this is your family, your true family, coherent light body got invaded. And you're supposed to be in a beautiful divine partnership, between yourself as a physical cellular body being of a person that's shaped like a humanoid, and your non-physical, pure light, coherent light form, family of light, that you're supposed to be in a beautiful partnership, in love with each other, sharing your energy with each other. I say in my notes, they are extra dimensional creatures, like outside of this dimension, and they are in partnership with you. Negative thought entities are not only harming your physical body by creating disease, invention of death, invention of disease, that manifests from their destabilization, they're harming your chakras themselves by forcing them over into out of alignment format. So here's a chakra in perfect alignment. The thought entities enter and make the chakra go to the side. That means you get a disease, and it means your chakras also get diminished. It's bad for you. It's bad for your chakras. This is a very bleak situation. Right, let me read a little bit more. The negative thought entities, their agenda is to bring all energy down to the lowest state so that they can feed off of it. You got it? Imagine no love anywhere, because they are not love-based beings. They're like, we want to turn everything into garbage, garbage everywhere. And what they do not want is for anyone to raise their energy up to unconditional love and above, and to circumvent their blocks to the divine and get to higher consciousness, which is, of course, what we're all doing. They have an anti-ascension agenda because they want to keep feeding off of the living. And this is a very bleak situation. In my notes, I say you have been born into slavery as a tiny child of God, connected to God and full of divine potential. But you have been whittled away down through your systems of development and also stunted in your ability to develop your higher faculties, all in order to serve the negative thought entities, the demons, or the putis. That's where we're coming from. And their antithesis, I have to talk about the antithesis of what the putis are: angels, the halos, the crown chakra, and that's really what you are connected to, your family of light. Depending upon how fast or at what rate you're vibrating, you can tune into either channel angel or channel devil. And this has to do with the genetic squashing inside of you. So I'll just get forward in my notes a little bit. But when your planet was invaded, the invaders came into your chakras and they came into your DNA, because your DNA is a bridge of light between your physicality self, somatic cellular structure, and your world of pure light or pure thoughts or pure possibilities. And the invasion into your DNA, you are now a hybrid of the original Earth human and these invaders that came from Mars, and their tendencies and their characteristics, which are anti-life and antithetical to the cosmos, but you have them inside of you. So this is what it means when people struggle with their addictions. They're struggling with their family demons, and addictions can be anything. It can be tobacco. It can be a drug. It can be a negative partnership. It can be anything that you do over and over habitually that you know you shouldn't do and is making disease happen in your body. You do it anyway. You have a choice. You have a free will choice at the level of yellow from where your willpower emanates. You get to choose about which things are in your body, which things you are sending to entropy. Which things you are sending to entropy, a state of non-being, go out of existence, and which things you are energizing. So you make the choice in your own body. You get to say, these are the aspects of me that are the real me. I'm really loving. I'm really creative. I'm really, you can name any characteristic about you. That is who you really are. And then the things that you're not really. And those are all the things that you send to entropy. I'm not really a person that needs to smoke tobacco cigarettes every day. That's not the real me. That's an addiction that is living through you. I'm not this negative, fearful self-talk. I'm not low self-worth. I'm not judgment of others. I'm not mean or cruel to others. That's all not me. That all goes to entropy. We make choices about who lives through your body. So your DNA is like an antenna that you can use to perceive different levels of reality. You can perceive the angelic superhuman level of reality, or you can perceive the demonic negative thought entity level of reality. And that you really do get to make choices, even though upon the recording of this class in 2014, the choices were more easily made. And now there are a lot of things that are happening in terms of false light being projected into your pineal glands by sun simulator in the sky, artificial 5G network, things that are not consensual. So it's like, let's say in the recording, I tell you to be on a diet, a demon-free diet, don't feed demons with negativity anymore. And back then in 2014 and 2015, it was easier to make that choice. It involved personal willpower and personal spiritual warriorship and strong personal boundaries. In our world right now, it's like you're going to the gym and you're trying to be fit and someone is literally injecting cheesecake into you. It's false technological, false light that comes from the sky, false light that comes from 5G, false light that comes from people who have had, let's call them the lollipops, that gave them joy, the joy, because, there's some things that I can't say on different platforms. So I just, will make euphemisms there. Things that rhyme with magazines, people that got the magazines, those are making it difficult for you to do this level of boundary creation where you choose only to energize the thoughts that you really wish to energize. There's literal profound mind control that really is brings up real questions of consent in terms of who you really are and what amount of choice you're able to have in the expression of who you really are. So we're in a different era now where it is much, much more difficult to say, no, thank you, no cheesecake for me, I'm on a diet. No demonic thought structures for me, I'm on a diet from that. Much, much more difficult to say that now because the thought structures are sometimes forced inside of your mind. So it's necessary sometimes to do a lot of planet cleaning and clearing. And I'm going to get into that self-protection from negative thought entities. Depending upon how fast and what rate you're vibrating, you can tune into either channel angel or channel devil. That's what I'm talking about here. You have some demon within your genes and you have some angel within your genes. And the flying rainbow lasagna, again, is one modality or technique or tool that you can use to exacerbate and align with the angelic tendencies, be a light eater, and go away from the demonic tendencies. Since the destruction of Mars and the fall of humanity and the misuse of containers that are the third dimensional bodies on Earth at this moment, there's been a terrible state of being out of balance. And just because it existed and has been normalized over tens of thousands of years does not mean that it's sustainable or that it's condoned. Slavery goes against some of the basic precepts of the cosmos, which are based upon free will and freedom of choice. This whole system is corrupt. Literally everything that we've experienced here since the fall of Atlantis is corrupt. And humanity is much more than just the pathology of the invader mind. Just because you're in the same family, this is big family stuff, just because you're in the same biological family or ancestral family as someone does not necessarily mean that they are a loving presence to you. That's big. And that you are heading in the same direction in terms of your spiritual destination, that some family members might be so aligned with the demonic aspects of self that they might not actually be moving towards love, and you must allow them to make those choices. And we have been bifurcating and separating a lot over the past 10 years since I recorded this original class. And we're now at this point where it's like there's a chasm as big as the Grand Canyon. The people that identify with their demonic selves are going in that direction, and the people that identify with their angelic selves are going in this direction. And at this point, these are just like the roots have been determined, and there's really not a sense of like, get this guy over onto here. And you don't want to. You want to allow. That's what unconditional love is in a lot of ways, allowing of people to go where they want to go. But I want you to know that because people think about genes as being familial, family tendencies, families moving together in groups. It is not always that way. You can have people in the same family with the same potential. Like I tell you, epigenetics, identical twins do not develop identical diseases. That means that just because you have a brother or a sister or a mother or a father does not necessarily mean that their DNA is behaving the same as you or that you have the same spiritual destination. And it also means you could be born into one of these lineage families that comes from the destruction of Atlantis, of the people that aligned with the invaders, that they became the oppressors of humanity. And it does not necessarily mean that you share their fate. Big, big, big. Epigenetics, I got through that. Flying rainbow lasagna and the birth of a new dimension. That's what this painting is. How we get around the consciousness blockade. And that's where you get new energy, ideas, and encouragement from above. It gives you more heart, literally. So the flying rainbow lasagna has many different aspects to it. One of the aspects that I've been teaching you about is energy versus entropy. Another one of these aspects is the capacity to higher dimensionally jump up and over a blockade, a roadblock, something that's in the road that you can't quite get past. If there's a blockade here between humanity and their divine connection, you can use flying rainbow lasagna to jump up and over and get back to God. That is what I want everybody to do. And that is very different than saying like, you have to do it in my way or something like that. I give this to you as a tool so that you can do the jumping up and over in your way, know that it can be done, and then find your particular pathway, reconnecting in terms of getting back to God. This is the way that I jump and get back to God. And then you can also do it too, genetically, higher dimensionally, with your time body, with your coherent body of light. You jump over the genetic blockade that was put into this planet with the invasion of Atlantis, and you regain your divine connection. Okay, that's beautiful. Wait, hold on one moment. Let me just do a little bit of drink. Let me also read what's going on in the chat. Now's a good moment for me to see what's going on. Okay, Melissa asks, isn't schizophrenia a symptom of putis bothering a very sensitive person? Big yes on that. That I would say that schizophrenia, not in terms of multiple personality dissociative disorder, but in the sense of hearing voices, is mostly misdiagnosed hearing putis. Hearing putis in your mind, tuned to the wrong radio station in your mind, and that most psychiatric drugs do not actually help people to get tuned into the right radio stations in your mind. You know what does help? Not taking pharmaceutical drugs, not taking different chemicals, eating pure food, being away from technology, and doing entity removal practices to create strong energetic boundaries. That's how you get rid of those negative, unwanted voices in your mind. Melissa says, you have a real loving family member when they choose to break into jail to help break all of us out. Thank you. That is very truthful. Thank you for that recognition. Cassandra says, not sure if this is on topic for today, but will you be touching on the artificial sun versus organic sun? Yes, I will. That comes a little bit later in the presentation. So hang tight for that. I promise I will get to artificial sun simulator, 5G, and other forms of nanotechnology and mind control technology. Okay, let me just read a little bit more here. Entities have a choice to either change and eat the food of love or to completely starve. That is what is upcoming. So the beings that, not beings, the creatures, organisms, invaders that invaded Atlantis, that have been turning you into food and farming humanity for millennia, have a choice. Since the invention of flying rainbow lasagna, they have a choice. They actually can choose to go to entropy. They don't have to be stuck, smeared on the membrane of death and without a pathway to get back home. They can choose to eat the food of love, or they can completely starve. And what the starvation, so either you start running OS love and become a part of that world, or you don't have any energy. And the truth is they're not supposed to have any energy, because if you remember, they were supposed to go to entropy a long time ago. So the starvation is not meant to be like a slow, painful process of suffering and being stuck in Christian hell and hellfire and brimstone on them all the time. It is actually supposed to be a running out of gas, and then they cannot move anymore. And entities who use energy as a type of economy, they steal from the chakras of the living, and then they use that energy to fuel themselves. This is the economy of hell, which is just like the economy of dollars that you see around you, and which was set up by the negative entities in hell. I think it's time to get to the economy of hell. The economy of hell, our Earth surface economy. This relates to the game of musical chairs. There's never enough. Intentional scarcity, creating fear and suffering. And they created it to torture and oppress beings who have a physical form so that they will get more negative energy and be cut off from their true power. They make that game of musical chairs without enough chairs on purpose. You get it? They make this economy here limited on purpose. They want your misery. They don't want you to have your bills paid and your rent paid and everybody to be like, la, 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 I'm using money. Everything is great. They want people to be like, oh no, it's the first of the month. Do I have enough money? What about my electrical bill? Maybe I do this. Maybe I do that. Like everybody trying to get their money, everybody trying to do this. All of that fear, anxiety, and scarcity is on purpose. Also in my languaging, you will note that I often talk about Earth's surface humans. I now must speak about what happened in ancient Atlantis. In the invasion of Atlantis, Atlantis was a place where we taught everybody the Merkaba as part of their natural beginner's lessons of being alive. So we did Merkaba a lot. When people were in that state, we also had the capacity to see and sense the future. These guys over here could tell that there was going to be an aggressive strike from these guys over here. These guys over here did not just sit around like a bump on a log waiting for the punch to the face. They did not. What they did was they, in an incredibly adept way, created a shielded place that could shield some of them. that is known as Agartha or Hagartha, Shambhala, Shangri-la, inner earth, or hidden earth, depending upon which earthly mythological tradition you follow. There are portals to these places, to this place, Shangri-la, Agartha. Like Mount Shasta is one of those portals, but you cannot get through the portal. You can't get through the frequency door until or unless you are shaped just right as a frequency being. You have to be shaped like the right type of song, the right music. You need to be playing that song. That's how I go through the door. I need to play that song. And if you're not playing that song, heart music, you cannot get through the door to Shambhala. And it is something that you cannot do through impostership or force. So when they saw, these adepts saw that the planet was going to be invaded, they created a bubble that is this vestigial traces of Atlantis, that they were able to safeguard themselves in there. They never fell. And you could consider them true ascended masters that are very pristine, continuation and upholdment of the original Atlantean culture, and that they've been hiding out there, not hiding out, but like sustaining themselves in a bubble, but disconnected from the galactic society that they used to be fully connected to. So this is big. It is analogous to what happened with the Native Americans of North America. Your land is taken. Can't go around as a hunting, gathering, nomadic society anymore. People live on reservations, but they maintain the vestigial traces of their culture. They retain their oral traditions. They retain their names, their ways of being, their ways of talking, the things that are portable, their artistry and other forms of self-expression, but they lost their land. The beings of Shambhala and Agartha lost their land. They lost their lifestyle. Lifestyle was to be in total freedom on the surface of Earth, also to be total freedom in connecting to galactic society. And they don't have that anymore. So they are in this bubble that keeps them safe, but have lost a lot, that keep alive these traces. And they're very much in solidarity of the battle of those of us that are here in this level of being. And of course, I was not in the bubble. I was already in the stars. So I am in solidarity with them, I'm in solidarity with you, and I'm a messenger from the level of the stars. But you are not abandoned by them. They care very, very much about your rectification and your revivification. You're bringing you back to life and back to your truthful code. And their job, like they're staying alive. They're maintaining the truthfulness of who they are in that space. So I bring this up in order to say I often make a distinction between Earth's surface humans of this time, and then there is also hidden Earth, that is like another dimension or a pocket world that are vestigial traces of the beings of Atlantis that never came into this level of dream world hypnosis, fallenness, but fallen is not that good, being fooled or stuck in some way. So, okay, hold on. I think it's time to take a brief break. Let's take a brief break of a few minutes. Everybody take care of yourselves. It's 2:16. Let's come back at like 2:19. Okay, just take a few moments. Brief break. And you know what? I'm going to stop the recording and I'm going to start a fresh recording. So this will be in 2 parts, so it won't be such a long recording. So thank you. Thank you to everybody who's been with me on the journey so far. Stay tuned for part 2.